appeared in a series of GOP ads promoting the Republican Party's traditional values.
Congress and the president say they're trying to help fix our country's economy. Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party have the right idea for America's future.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program here. The phones are open if you want to join us. You can bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Peakless Mountaineer.
And the authentic Lord Reverend Dr. Captain Kickass Buckshot Esquire, if you will, is also here.
Captain, you were interested in talking about the $5 million president tonight. What is that all about?
We can make him slower.
Slower. We can make him fall down more.
Weaker. Worse than he was before.
During the pre-show prep, we were talking about, I don't remember who did it, but one of these skit comedy shows, maybe Saturday Night Live or Mad TV or something like that. A long time ago, they did a spoof of the $6 Million Man. And instead they made the $600 Man.
Okay.
It was built out of toaster parts from a junkyard and, blender pieces and, because they had no budget at the time for the military. But now, wrong kind of $5 million man. This one is none other than the president, Joe Biden.
Well, what about him?
Well, would you like to buy Joe Biden? Apparently, he's for sale for $5 million.
That seems kind of cheap for a president.
That's what I said. Yeah. What a bargain.
Right?
This seems like, basement pricing. Is there a sale today? Is it a holiday? What's going on? This from Zero Hedge. Bombshell FBI document alleges $5 million bribe paid to Joe Biden by Burisma executive.
I know you're shocked.
Burisma. Wasn't that the Ukrainian power company?
Yep.
That Hunter Biden was all in depth with?
Yeah, Ukrainian oil company that Hunter Biden got like a really, really high level, well-paid position.
Yeah, he was getting like $50 million or something like that, right?
Because he has tremendous experience and his Ukrainian is flawless.
And running power companies and that kind
of thing. And he's never done crack.
No.
Nor does he own a laptop.
Or hired prostitutes.
Or all three at the same time.
Yeah.
Someone has leaked the contents of the stonewalled FBI document form FD 1023, which alleges that President Joe Biden was paid $5 million by an executive of Ukrainian natural gas firm Burisma Holdings, where his son Hunter sat on the board.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Apparently, that's his job description. Just sit there.
Board member.
You just sit.
I mean, that's pretty much all you do
anything
on a board.
Just sit.
I mean, it is a perfect place to put someone who's absolutely useless, but you're, using to bribe his dad.
Yeah, I mean, basically board positions in some cases are very kind of, well, in all cases, they're really boring positions.
B-O-R-E-D, not B-O-A-R-D?
Yes, very B-O-R-I-N-G, boring. And I presume they're, we're giving him this for some reason, and that's never really been made clear.
Well, the form dated June 30th, 2020, is from a highly credible, confidential human source who had detailed multiple meetings and conversations they had with a top Burisma executive over the course of several years, beginning in 2015. The CHS had been working with the FBI as a regular, reliable source of information since 2010 and has been paid approximately $200,000 by the Bureau. The Burisma executive sought the advice of the confidential source. A business professional on gaining U.S. oil rights and getting involved with the U.S. oil company, the source is familiar with the document, said the Burisma executive was speaking with the confidential source to get advice on the best way to go forward in 2015 and 2016. According to the form, the confidential human source said the Burisma executive discussed Hunter's role on the board. The confidential human source questioned why the Burisma executive needed his or her advice on acquiring access to U.S. oil if he had Hunter Biden on the board. The Burisma executive answered by referring to
he's
Hunter
high as
Biden
hell.
as dumb. So this executive said,
It's almost like he didn't meritocratically earn his place on the
Right.
board of a
You mean
Ukrainian company.
he didn't perform tasks valuable enough and rise through the ranks by his own accomplishments to achieve his seat on the board?
That's kind of what it sounds
It
like.
begs the question again, why is he there? If he is so stupid to the point where,
Well, to ask that question is to answer it. I mean, obviously, this is a way of bribing the people in actual power.
Sure,
And the funny
but
part about this,
why?
well, I mean, because the American government runs Ukraine. Pure and simple. So when the coup happened in 2014, Burisma didn't even bother to try and bribe the new incoming government. They went straight over their head to their managers in the United States government.
smart move.
It is. It's a real cost-saving motion right there.
You don't have to bribe a bunch of people when you can just bribe the president himself.
Exactly. Why bother with these middle management types when I know who you're taking orders from?
Or in that case, the vice president.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Or who knows if Barack Obama got himself a cut too.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
And either way, that was the reason for it, which is why he lost his job as soon as Obama was no longer in office.
Wait, who lost whose job?
Oh, Hunter Biden lost his job as
At Burisma.
At Burisma, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that detail.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The second that they lost that election, it was announced that they were letting him go with a
Right.
nice severance
We don't need your
package.
services on the board anymore.
Yeah.
Was it like $5 million?
I don't remember how much it may have been,
Could be.
actually.
According to the Burisma executive, the company had to, quote, pay the Bidens because Ukraine's lead prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, was investigating Burisma. According to the CHS, he suggested that the Burisma executive pay the Bidens $50,000 each.
That's it.
This is the part in the movie Austin Powers where everybody laughs at the paltry sum of money that's being, they're anyway. To which the Burisma executive replied, no, not $50,000. It's $5 million.
$5 million. Okay.
$5 million for one Biden, $5 million for the other Biden, the executive reportedly said.
Okay. All right.
So
$5 for Hunter, $5 for Dad.
One can only assume these things, but
Okay.
this is a supposed quote from this executive.
It sounds to me like Dad wanted his son to be taken care of, right? Because he doesn't bring anything to the operation. He doesn't bring anything to the board.
Obviously.
He doesn't have any expertise on securing oil rights or
Nope.
cutting deals with American oil companies. He has no power to assist with any kind of governmental issues. So it was totally like a nepotistic thing. Like, oh, you're going to help me out. Well, you need to help my son. He's a crackhead.
yeah.
And if you look through the emails, it'll be like, and this much to the big guy, which is pretty obviously his dad. So, yeah, this was very simply a way of getting a cut to Biden. I mean, these are all just ways of paying bribes without them appearing to be bribes.
Sure.
Just like books and speaking tours, all of these things.
Totally legal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's some of that as the article continues. The $5 million repayments appeared to reference some sort of retainer that Burisma intended to pay the Bidens in order to clean up several issues, including the investigation led by Shokin. Another source told Fox.
The idea being that the Shokin guy was the prosecutor in the Ukraine.
Right.
But the idea being that because the United States put all these guys in power, essentially, that they could whisper down the line and say, you need to lighten up on Burisma.
Right.
basically.
Right. The CHS believes that the $5 million payment to Joe Biden and $5 million to Hunter happened as the Burisma executive said he paid the Bidens so through so many different bank accounts. That's a quote. Through so many different bank accounts that investigators would not be able to unravel this for years. The document does make reference to the big guy, as you mentioned just moments ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about another form of regulatory capture. So they know that the laws that'll be put in place by this new government will only happen with the okay of the American government. So they don't want the new government to put in laws that restricts them. They want the new government to put in laws that restricts their competition.
Right.
So this is their way of making sure that they can whisper in those particular ears so that the laws that do pass in the new propped up puppet government are only the ones that benefit Burisma.
You have to wonder what they're doing now. Are they Is Hunter back involved in some way, shape, or form?
He's back in crack.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that they're just as up to their noses in corruption as they used to be. I mean, it's an intensely corrupt country, honestly.
They are tyrants, aren't they?
Well, so there's tyrants and then there's tyrants, right? So, like, we complain very frequently about the new things that they're, adding on top of the tyranny in this country, but I wouldn't compare it to, say, North Korea. So there's tyrants and then there's tyrants. So, like, North Korean tyranny is a much worse form of tyranny, without a doubt. And there's corruption and there's corruption. So, like, there's regular corruption.
Yeah, some slave plantations treat their slaves better than others.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
That's
we
really
know
what
that
it comes down
the
to.
money has gotten way bigger, right? Because now there's literally, $100 billion plus and counting taxpayer dollars that have been shuffled over to Ukraine. Of course, once it gets
And
there,
another
you don't know where it goes.
$2.1 billion is going over.
Fresh.
Fresh,
Right?
yeah.
Because they didn't have enough already.
Yeah. So, and of course, once it gets there, you lose track of anything as far as where it goes. So, who knows? Did Burisma get a cut of it? Did the Nazis that are in the military there get a big cut of it? Who knows where that money's gone?
And I know where some of the money is going is it's coming right back around. So, like, they when SBF got caught with
the FTX,
with the
founder.
FTX problem. So, one of the things that came out, because all of a sudden these are public documents that everyone gets to look at. One of the things that came out was that that money got laundered. So it went from all of us to Ukraine, from Ukraine to Sam Bankman-Fried in FTX, and from FTX back to the Democratic National Convention.
Funny how that
just
works.
Real simple money laundering, but it's legal.
According to the Burisma executive, they didn't pay the big guy directly. Meanwhile, sources tell Fox that the Burisma executive appears to be at a very, very high level of the company, with one source even suggesting that it could be the president of the company, Mykola Zlochevsky, though the executive's name is redacted in the document. Okay. Biden notably bragged on camera about quid pro quo arrangement to have Shokin fired.
Wow.
Yeah.
I said
he says all kinds of things out loud, and there's never any kind of consequence.
That was honestly like it was a conspiracy theorist's wet dream. So there he is at the what is it? It's one of those round table, like the on foreign
G7?
affairs, the Committee on Foreign Affairs, I think it was. So he's at, one of the like big conspiracy roundhouses that these people of immense power are always on. That and the Trilateral Commission and that sort of thing. So he's at that, speaking there on the record about this corruption, where he says that you've got to get rid of this investigator who's going after his son. And if you don't get rid of this investigator, I will be on that plane and you're not getting your money.
Here's the actual quote from Joe Biden. I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. That's the actual quote Biden said in 2018 at a CFR event.
That was it. Yeah, CFR, Council on Foreign Relations.
Interesting. That was during the Trump administration. How? I guess he just has enough connections.
He said that about when he was under Obama, because he was actually visiting that country, I think either with Obama or on his behalf.
Huh. Okay.
And wouldn't you know, he got fired.
Yeah, I bet he did.
SOB, he got fired.
That's the actual. It says, well, son of a. Can I say that on the air?
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, I guess so.
Son of a bitch, you got fired.
Son of a bitch, he got fired. He continued, and they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Solid. I guess solid means
solid with the feds
on their side.
Yeah. Solid means he's in the mafia.
On the take.
He's on the take. He's not going to go after this corruption and, ruin our gig.
Of course, we would be remiss if we didn't note that this is exactly what Trump was impeached for asking about after the 2019 phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky, who Trump asked to launch investigations into the Biden family, particularly Hunter's dealings with Burisma and Joe Biden's involvement in Shokin's ouster.
Yeah, when it comes to international corruption, Ukraine has more than its fair share. Like a really significant more than its fair share that goes through Ukraine to launder all of this.
And look what Trump got as a result.
Right.
He's got 37 charges now that he's facing in federal court.
Well, and that's one of the things. Like, these are permanent messages that they are giving to any new presidents in the future.
This is what we will do to you.
Right.
Yeah.
This is where the line is. Here's where our line is. You do not mess with our payday, and here's our payday.
There's just a couple more points in the article. The confidential source, according to sources familiar with the FD 1023 form, told the Burisma executive he should, quote, get away from the Bidens, and said the executives should not want to be involved with them. A source familiar with the document told Fox News Digital that the confidential human source goes on to detail a later conversation with the Burisma executive following the 2016 presidential election. The confidential source asked the executive if he was upset that Donald Trump won. The source said the Burisma executive told the confidential source that he was an oracle, referring to his or her advice to get away from the Bidens due to fears of potential investigations into their dealings. These revelations came to pass after a whistleblower approached GOP Senator Chuck Grassley and House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer to let them know that the FBI was in possession of document FD 1023.
Well, of course, nothing will be done about this document, but it's interesting nonetheless.
And in the same way you referred to President Trump facing charges and being impeached, and we've seen this happen before. Nothing's going to happen.
Not charges.
Yeah, okay.
You think nothing's going to happen with
I
this?
think nothing's going to happen.
What do you mean by that?
Nobody prosecutes a president, a former president.
He's being prosecuted.
Yeah, but it's going to fall apart. And
you think so?
Yeah, I think it's all just
Yeah,
going to...
I'm with him.
Really?
Or he's going to get off completely. It's a dog and pony
I mean,
show.
like,
Really? Okay.
Let's
I
run
think
these
so.
ideas. Let's investigate. In our own little imaginary world, what will happen on A or B, right?
Okay.
So,
Well, first of all, before you do that, it is certainly unprecedented what they've done, right? Like no president has ever been raided by the FBI in his home.
right.
That happened, and as soon as that happened, I'm like, all right, all bets are off. I thought he was untouchable, like every president, and no, he's not untouchable, at least in that way. And now charges are being brought, 30-something charges. I mean, that's a pretty serious array of charges. They may end up bringing more later on if they treat us, they treat him like they treat anybody else. So why are you so skeptical?
Hold on. So just to deal with the massive break in protocol that this is. So I'm a student of history, and you see this sort of thing happen at certain turning points. So this is the sort of thing that you would expect when, say, the communists are taking over. It's like, okay, well, we've reached this point. Now we're going to use the police apparatus to target our political opponents. Now, whether it's the communists or the fascists or whoever it is, whenever some ideology or another hits a certain point of popularity and they've done enough to change the society and its laws, then they just have to keep pushing the envelope and going further and further. Like, they reach that point where they just have to nail it, or else they're all going to be put in jail.
So why would they backtrack? If they're going forward, if they're trying to send a message, why would they backtrack and drop the charges or botch the case, throw the case, or whatever? I mean, what are you predicting is going to happen here?
Oh, what I think is going to happen is that none of this is going to go anywhere. So, for one thing, part of this,
meaning they'll lose a jury trial?
They know that. They know that Trump is not going to exit any wars. They know that he's not what they want.
He did kind of draw down Afghanistan, didn't he?
I mean, a bit.
He shuffled some troops.
Yeah.
I mean, he withdrew some troops, and then Biden withdrew the rest of them.
But then he sent them somewhere else.
Well,
right.
Of course.
Right. He didn't wind down any of the, what are we in, half a dozen wars right now? He didn't wind any of those down. He didn't even withhold from Ukraine any of the weapons that they wanted or any of the money to buy the weapons from us that they wanted.
Yeah, by no means was he, that different from any of his predecessors.
Right. So this I think is just another thing to say, look how anti-establishment Trump is. See, the whole establishment's going after him.
You think this is a play to actually get him more publicity, more popularity? I mean, certainly people are going to galvanize behind him.
You do realize that negative publicity spreads faster and further than positive publicity.
I get it. But so do you think that when this goes to trial, the odds that they're going to bring 37 charges and then drop all 37 seem pretty low, right? The federal government doesn't bring charges against you just to play a little, show. It's not a show, right? Like they're going to go forward with
or
this.
Is it, right? Because it seems to me like this is a lot like watching some episode, on the next episode, of the United States of America. Previously on.
It seems to me like his best chance is to hope that a Trumper gets on the jury, and the odds are someone will. I mean, 12 people, there's a good chance at least one of them is going to be a Trump fan.
So,
based on history, I don't think anything is going to happen other than a whole bunch of people are going to be talking about it.
This one's being held from, the jury selection is from Florida, right? Or is this the one that's
this would be the Southern District of Florida.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a Trumper on that jury.
Okay.
There's going to be at least one Trumper that ends up on that jury, and he'll at least hang the jury if nothing else. Okay. I don't think that anything important is going to come from this. I think this is just it's no new. It's the no such thing as bad press.
It's the WWE, right?
Right.
This is just the next piece of drama in the soap opera that is the United States government.
Yeah, and it's beautiful for both sides because the Republicans get to really put on this amazing show of we're the underdogs, we're taking down the establishment and draining the swamp, woo! Which none of that's going to happen. We know that for a fact because none of that did happen in the 4 years that he existed as president, and in the 2 years that he was president and had the Senate and the House. So none of that's going to happen.
And
I guess,
meanwhile,
and on the left, they get to really flip out, and that's one of the big parts about this is the whole woke movement has hit this point where it is either going to explode or fizzle. And that's why they have to keep pushing the boundary and be like, look, we have to do, if we have to break the law to make sure that these white supremacists do not end up in the White House, then that's just what we have to do.
I guess another possibility for Trump is he gets elected before the trial, which, federal government takes a long time to get to a trial.
And then he pardons himself.
And then pardons himself.
Right.
Pardon me, everyone.
Or fires the prosecutor or whatever, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
I'm just saying, historically speaking, this is unprecedented in any way, and not unprecedented, not to be convenient, and so based on history, no president has successfully been prosecuted really for anything.
Yeah,
and
this is the first even attempt.
And even there have been previous impeachments and previous attempts,
but those aren't prosecutions.
At all of this kind of a thing.
Those aren't criminal charges.
Right.
I'm okay, sure, but that's what makes this, a story. Right?
It is a story for sure.
Outside of that, though, historical precedent suggests that nothing is going to happen.
All right, that's an interesting prediction.
And I believe it because I think Peakless is onto something. Mm-hmm. What these people in power want to do is rile up the pitchfork people against the torch people, and the torch people against the pitchfork people. Meanwhile, they're all robbing us blind and murdering whoever they want to.
That's a great point.
And what's fun about this one, they can tell both sides that the other side is the racist ones.
The number, if you want to join us here, it's 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Meanwhile, they're saying that there's this guy that this week said UFOs are a real thing, and the government's been...
man, they keep trying to get us to bite on that lure, and I'm really glad so far it ain't working.
All right, you're skeptical. More coming up here. It's Free Talk Live. When New Hampshire peacefully leaves the Union, will we have to take on some of the national debt? Let's be clear, that's not national debt, that's federal debt. Debt that was incurred by a bunch of people that we didn't elect, forcing policies on us that we didn't want, and 2.5 million unelected federal bureaucrats. According to Professor Matt Quartrup from Coventry University and the foremost expert on independence referenda, the rule in international law is that political divorce is not like domestic divorce in that there is no alimony due and no obligation to pay the debt incurred by the larger organization. New Hampshire's government is a paragon of fiscal responsibility compared to the United States federal government. We didn't create the national debt, we didn't consent to it, and when we declare peaceful independence, New Hampshire will not owe a single solitary dime of federal debt. You can learn more about how we can peacefully divorce D.C. at nhindependence.org and join the movement at nhexit.us.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump this week was charged over his alleged mishandling of classified documents after he left the White House. The twice impeached former US president, who's again running for the White House, faces 37 criminal counts, including conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, and illegally retaining classified documents under the Espionage Act. From Washington, D.C., Benji Hire reports.
It's his second indictment in as many months. This one could land him a prison sentence on conviction. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump, protesting his innocence, said he'd been summoned to appear at a federal court in Miami, Florida, on Tuesday afternoon. He'll be arrested there and hear the charges against him. What is this all about? Well, last year, his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago was searched by the FBI and 11,000 documents were seized. They included around 100 marked as classified, some labelled top secret. A separate investigation into Joe Biden's handling of documents continues. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
The French president has condemned the stabbing attack in southeast France that took place on Thursday, leaving 4 children needing intensive care. Ross Cullen has the latest.
Emmanuel Macron said that attacking children was the most barbaric act there is. He was speaking on Friday after visiting Annecy, where an attack took place on Thursday as a man stabbed adults and children in and around a playground in the southeast city in France. The French president also met members of the public who tried to intervene to stop the attack, saying that he was extremely proud of their efforts.
A major dam was destroyed in Ukraine on Tuesday, triggering what the United Nations calls a humanitarian, economic and ecological catastrophe. Moscow and Kyiv blame each other, and heavy flooding has forced thousands to evacuate the region. Journalist Tom Much has visited the Kherson region and reports from Odessa.
The Ukrainian government is warning that the worst of the flooding is still to come, that there could be a higher water level coming in the next 2 or 3 days. Again, this is actually going to affect Russian-occupied areas even worse because they're on the lower bank of the river.
Heavy smoke from Canada's wildfires impacted millions of people across parts of North America this week. On Tuesday, New York's air quality was briefly ranked as the worst in the world, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. President Biden's announced that more than 600 US firefighters have been sent north to help Canadian authorities battle the blazes. More than 200 fires are burning out of control. And former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is stepping down as a Member of Parliament, following the release of the Partygate report. The inquiry was examining whether he misled Parliament over whether Downing Street broke COVID lockdown rules. Johnson says the report is an attempt to drive him out. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join us on this live Saturday episode. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about the corruption that, of course, is inevitable when you have a position that is as powerful as the President of the United States.
Well, and if you have an organization that is based on immoral acts and unethical behavior that claims a monopoly on violence, that organization can't help but be corrupt.
Indeed. By the way, I want to say thanks to Daniel Gaudreau, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. You can join AMPS, as Daniel has done. Silver level, what is $5 a month, and that is all that we ask over at amps.freetalklive.com. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. It's a way for you to get behind the show here and help us continue to spread the ideas of liberty and peace, freedom, cryptocurrency, the things we like to talk about here 7 nights a week on broadcast radio and beyond. We're on podcast. We're on live streams as well. So thanks, Dan, for supporting us. And you can join him over at amps.freetalklive.com. It takes you to our Patreon page where you can sign up with debit card, credit card, or PayPal. If you don't care for Patreon, and there are reasons to not care for Patreon, you can use our Odyssey channel as well. There's a way to donate through that. You can get a monthly donation set up with your debit card or credit card. Go to video.freetalklive.com and click the join button at the top of our video channel, and you can get signed up there. And then you're supporting Odyssey with the fees instead of supporting Patreon. So either way, the money helps us do what we do. So thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of radio transmission, as opposed to internet transmission, is that these signals are broadcast into the air, and then they just sort of keep going, and they leave the atmosphere if the signals are strong enough, powerful enough, and will travel throughout the universe.
I don't know how far, but they go somewhere.
Because, well, I know that there are scientists who have these radio telescopes pointed at the sky, and they're always searching for some sort of radio transmission coming from other directions.
Right.
So it seems to me that Free Talk Live is intergalactic.
It could be. I don't know how radio transmits out beyond the Earth.
I'm pretty sure.
No, the other galaxies are too far away.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like whether or not it's intergalactic depends on whether it's reached another galaxy, and it takes more than say 20 years at light speed.
All right, so can we say
we are
it's
interstellar though?
Good point.
How about galactic?
We are galactic.
Okay. Okay,
we
good
are
enough.
a galactically
That sounds
broadcast
pretty cool.
radio program.
All right, let's go to the phones here. We got Tim on the line in Florida. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Tim.
This is Tim on the line in Florida.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I took my friend Bill. He's 86-year-old. I took him to Walmart yesterday.
That's nice of you.
No, it was the day before. Anyway, there was an issue. We roll up because he's got a person living in his place, and they've taken over the living room, and they're on his TV. And
is this an unwanted person, like somebody who's?
It's well, I don't want to get into the whole story, but it's actually the owner of the apartment. Let's say he was evading a divorce situation and property ownership, and it ended up, he lost everything. So anyway, he's got this guy there now. He's going to be leaving at the end of the month. Not the point, but he's there in the living room now. So like he's watching the TV. So I took my friend Bill to Walmart to get a Roku, and he brought some printer ink. So we're talking about like $140, and then he wanted to get $100 cash back.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically the legacy banking system, and this is a story about how the legacy banking system both failed my friend who was 86 and it basically embarrassed him at Walmart for no good reason, and we still don't know why.
All right, what happened?
Yeah, so he runs his card, puts in his code's right, and it declines. It declines like 3 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And the Haitian chick is trying to help him, and I'm like, look, it's not the chip reader, it's something else,
Something with his account.
In other words, the bank's doing it. Yeah, because the guy's waiting behind us. So finally, I'm like, I whispered in Bill's ear. I'm like, let me run my credit card. I ran my credit card so we could get out of there.
Right.
The next day, we went to the bank. The guy didn't know why, but he said, yeah, your card's good.
Well, was there a balance in his account?
Yeah, I mean, he's got $38,000 in his account. So it's like.
Okay. Did he say why his card was declined?
Canceled.
Yeah.
Nope. They don't know.
I mean, they should be able to figure that out. They should be able to look at the transaction logs and say, okay, well, this was the reason or whatever. And maybe he was getting his PIN number wrong.
It even hit his account as pre-authorization like 5 times.
Whoa!
So if he had only had like $500 in his account, he would have gone negative possibly.
Right, because that pre-authorization hangs out for a while, and if you stack them on top of each other, it can actually prevent you from making any meaningful transaction.
Yeah, I guess you're right. This does sound like just a straight-up bank system failure, where the system did not do what it was supposed to do, which was if you get the PIN number right, that's supposed to authorize the transaction, and that's it. That's supposed to be the end of the story.
Yeah. And this guy's already afraid of like people trying to steal his money, because they've got into his computer before using remote software, and they call him on the phone from a different country. Anyway, I want to share that with you because it really is a failure of the banking system. And if we just used a push system, not to say Bitcoin, because that's slow and bulky, but maybe Dash. But if we just used a push system, we wouldn't even have to deal with this.
Yeah, what you're referring to is cryptocurrencies, where generally, I don't think there's any that I've never heard of any that does it differently. With cryptocurrency, no one else can authorize a transaction besides you, unless, of course, you've given them your keys, and then they could do that. But by default, you have your keys, and you're the only one that has them, and so you are the one who sends the transaction. It is permissionless. It goes over a network that is decentralized. No one can stop it. There's no one in the way to say, whoa, are you really the person you say you are? No, it's as long as you got the keys, you can send the transaction. There's no one that says that you can't do this. There's no, unless the internet's not working, your transaction is going to go through. It's going to make it to the receiving party.
So here's the question that I have about this. Is he taking this warning for what it is? Look, you've got thousands of dollars that at any time they can just say, no, you may not spend these because it's not your money. You have an account with someone else. You have a loan that you've made to a bank. You don't have money. Now, if you had like a safe full of goldbacks or an account full of Bitcoin Cash or something like that, you would have money. But what you have when you quote unquote have money in a bank is you have made a loan to a bank and it might repay it when you ask for it, or it might not.
Is there an answer, Tim? Does does he feel differently now about the banking system, or is this like, going to be looked at as just a one-time fluke, and he'll just keep on doing what he's always done? Did we lose you? I think we lost Tim. Tim, thanks for the call tonight. My guess is at 86 years old, he's too old to change.
Yeah.
He knows what gold is.
I do want to say though that the legacy banking system, regulated by, the U.S. government as well as the Federal Reserve vicariously through the government, is not designed for human ease. It's not designed with customer service in mind. It's not designed with any of that in mind. It is designed to be a grinder, right? That's all that it does. And if you get caught up in the churn of the system, it will chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that's not where they make their money. That's why it isn't designed for our benefit, because we're not their real customers. Their real customers are BlackRock, the federal government, all of these incredibly corrupt entities are where they're making their real money.
Yeah, who oddly enough are kept very happy.
Indeed. And that's why, when something happens where it's like, oh, right, I've got depositors who want their money back. When something like that happens, they're just completely taken aback. And sometimes it'll cause the entire bank to fold because they go, oh, right, we have customers, like depositors that actually want their money sometimes. Forgot about that because we weren't making any of our money from you guys. We were making our money from the people who pay us back for the loans on the money that we printed out of thin air.
Yeah, I do recall sometime probably in the last decade, you guys are familiar with payday loans.
Yeah, sure. Right? Very high interest.
Very high interest. A lot of folks get caught up in that that churn, and you end up losing money big time, or they start playing one against another. So they'll go borrow from one payday loan company and borrow from another one to pay the first one off and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What really got me was one day I logged into my then non-credit union bank account. And after, because I was looking to see, I was actually searching for a new bank. I wanted to get out of this one bank because they had done me wrong on some overdraft charges. And I was like, I'm done with you guys. I'm just moving my money. And lo and behold, inside of my user interface on their website was, hey, you already are on direct deposit, and so we've enabled this new payday loan feature right in your bank account for you. Yeah, same high interest rate as the payday loan places, right? They just took, literally, the bank stole the payday loans product and put it inside of their user interface for when their customers log in.
Good bank to leave, for sure. Yeah. You had a story about banks tonight, Peakless. Why don't you pull up the latest on Wells Fargo, one of the largest banks in the country, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's go to David in San Francisco. David, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I got when I took financial management in college, they taught us never, ever borrow over 3%. And when you start looking at the Federal Reserve right now, they're trying to get borrowing up to 6%. And so twice dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's, this, I've forgotten the term you use about the banking system, but it's the old boy system is designed to keep people in perpetual debt.
Yep.
And the idea of, in fact, when Biden was talking about getting the kids out from underneath the student loans, he would be basically creating an enormous opportunity for them to expand and actually create something instead of being locked into perpetual debt. And the idea of cutting a few loans would free up so many people, inventive ideas and ability to rebuild your back porch or enhance your house and your other assets. It's just so penny wise and pound foolish to be talking about stifling the student loans problem.
Yeah. So wait, you're saying people should have the federal government pay off their student loans?
Well, not exactly that. It's if you know about.
And by that I mean taxpayers.
Well, the fake colleges. That there were a bunch of, 5-10 years ago, there were these fake colleges that were trapping kids into borrowing money to go to an online university that was basically giving them a kindergarten education.
That's about what they're getting in the regular universities at this point.
Well, that's not true.
No,
every
it
university
really is.
has got its own
Okay, if you look into the effect of the so-called education that they're getting in these colleges, in a lot of subjects, they are more informed and capable. They are more capable before they go to college than when they come out, especially in things like economics.
They certainly are not as likely to question so-called authority once they get out of government school or government college education. The most obedient people that we see in these surveys that are being done are the people who have the highest education. If you got a master's degree, you're more obedient. If you've got or you're the most obedient if you've got what's the lower one below that, whatever the 4-year.
So how many of those classrooms you've been in personally?
Too many.
Yeah, same.
Oh, I'm sure. But the money.
Well,
so
you sound like you don't believe us that we've been to college. Yeah, no, we've been to college. It's garbage.
Yeah, what was it? Junior college? Was it Harvard? Was it the School of Alabama?
It very much does not matter at this point.
I do have a question for David, though. You said at the top of your call that when you went to whatever it was, financial management class or whatever it was, that they taught you never to borrow more than 3%. Do you remember why they taught you that? I'm curious.
Well, yeah, as a business, it goes back to that the baby boom was cheated. That 3% was actually considered high compared to what people from World War II were paying. I'm a baby boomer, so, the baby boom kids were the kids of World War II. Mm-hmm. And when a VA note, you could buy a house for 1.25%. On a VA note. If you were a World War II vet, the government would lend you money to buy a house at 1.25. I think it was 1.5. But then the baby boom, Vietnam comes along, and Richard Nixon decides to punish the baby boomers for opposing the war, and he starts doing the sky's the limit for interest rates. And so the baby boom, all of a sudden, by the time Jimmy Carter was in, interest rates were 22%. Not 3%, not 1.5%, but 22%.
So credit card rates.
Yeah, crazy numbers. Yeah, and so when I was taught 3%, that was actually, better than twice as high as World War II vets.
Okay, so it's a question of historical reference. I got you. Thanks.
Well, 7% is 7%, and that was the usury rate in Missouri, that it was against the law to charge more than 7%. Places like Utah had, I think it was 0.8% usury, but I think the highest usury rate was, I'm trying to think it was North Carolina or someplace at 11%.
So just to clarify what you were saying earlier, though, you were saying that you think that the government bailing out through the taxpayers, of course, or printing money or whatever, bailing out these people with college loans, that's something you support.
Well, yeah, because if you look at, and this gets into your previous conversation with that other caller, money used to reflect your reputation. If you were an honest person, you'd probably make a bunch of money if you made good cabinetry, if you made good cars, if you made good products and shoe man, whatever you did, your money was supposed to reflect your reputation. But if a thief or a pirate comes along and steals all of it, do they actually have a reputation? And is your reputation lost when somebody steals the numbers? So it's money has long been in this problem, and computerized money or tangible gold coins are still reflective of if it was really done by somebody honest or was it just stolen by somebody in the...
I'm not sure what any of that has to do with the question about college loans being paid off. So let's just zero in and focus. Let's just focus on that for a moment here. What it sounds like you're saying, David, by supporting the government using tax money or printing money, which of course steals from everyone that has dollars, to pay off. Hold on, I'd like to ask the question. To pay off these college loans, it sounds like what you're saying here is that the privileged brats that go to college should be taken care of by all the hardworking people in the United States who don't have college loans to pay off. Is that right?
No. Because when you're saying somebody's a privileged brat, you're ignoring the fact that there were people who got cheated and cheated and cheated. Like all of the jobs left Pittsburgh to go to China. All of the jobs left this city to go to someplace else. And they got told, well, you got to go back to college and learn a new trade. Well, the baby boom had to redo itself at least 5 times. 5 different times that they got cheated out of everything, and the legacy jobs got sent to China or sent to the sweatshops, and all of the looms, all of the fibers, and all of the...
But people going to college today, I mean, again, we're talking about people going to college like over the last few decades, for instance. Right. These are people who weren't trying to get a manufacturing job. They were going to college to supposedly get quote-unquote higher education. And they paid through the nose for it. And now I don't disagree that they get cheated because I think college is mostly a scam. And I feel bad for good people who get scammed out of this money. But that said, buyer beware. If you want to go and get a $100,000 loan for something that's not a really good deal in the first place, whether it's a college or a Ferrari or whatever it is that you're going to do with that money, that's not my problem, and I shouldn't be on the hook to bail you out for your mistakes.
What you're ignoring, you guys always talk about gold and tangible assets and specie as like in the old days, the treasury of a nation, the gold in its Fort Knox was the value of the nation. Well, in World War II, the IMF came along and they said that actually the education of a nation can be seen as an asset. That if you've got an intelligent population that can create all sorts of new inventions and create new...
But the United States doesn't create those types of individuals.
Sure we do.
Sending someone to college to make them smart is like putting someone in the NBA to make them tall.
Oh, that's the smartest thing I heard all week.
Thanks for the call tonight. He's being facetious there, but anyway, go ahead.
Now, I'll make the argument that he's making, though. I think there is some merit to the argument that, okay, so you have
an educated populace brings up the nation.
No, the argument that these ought to be, I mean, you say, like, should they be paid by the taxpayer? Well, hold on now. So these loans are fundamentally are made by the Department of Education. Like, they're the ones who are ultimately on the hook for all of these loans. So these are government loans. The people that made these loans are the government.
Right.
Now, they defrauded all of these people.
Yeah.
They told them, hey, you will definitely be able to get a job. It will be a good job and a high-paying one, and it'll be in the field that you enjoy. None of that is remotely true at all.
Sure. There's a ton of lies around college.
So since at this point, the government has defrauded people, and those people are now on the hook to the government.
Yes.
If the government then forgives these loans to the people that it defrauded, I don't see how anyone's a victim in that.
But that's not what the proposal is. The proposal isn't to just wipe them off the books. The proposal is to pay them off the books. So I would agree with you. If the government were simply saying, "Oh, we're just going to say forgive all these loans and we're just going to cross it off. We're saying it's over, done day. Here you go, all paid off. Have a nice day, kids. Good luck with your lives." That would be one thing. But what they're talking about, or the proposal was, and I think it got frozen or something. There was some sort of court thing, I think, that froze the procedure on this. I don't recall the exact status of it. But essentially, the idea was, no, we're going to go ahead and either print the money or we're going to tax people for it. But the little guy is going to pay off these college loans. They aren't going to just wipe them out. It's going to be paid for, every single penny, by the U.S. taxpayers.
But the government has $2.1 billion to give to Ukraine every other week.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the way they're going to do it. Because fiscal responsibility, we can't just make a loan and not pay it back.
Yeah, you can.
Well, they don't think they can.
Well, they do it all the time.
I'm waiting for the Fed and the U.S. government to pull what I like to call the Jubilee card. Right? This is something that has happened in other nations previously, historically, where they do have some sort of period of debt forgiveness. And by forgiveness, I'm not talking about what you're talking about, where they're going to steal from other people to pay it off. No, they're just saying, okay, we just forgive it. You don't owe it anymore. This
Never
debt is
gonna
wiped
happen.
off the books.
Never going to happen.
It actually might, as a last sort of stand with the dollar collapse. It might be something a trick that they pull out of their hat to try and kick the can down the road even further and keep the party going.
Yeah, I don't think they're ever going to do that, because that would be denying themselves profit.
I'm just saying, historically, it's been a tool that has been used, and it wouldn't surprise me if at some point, as the dollar continues to collapse, as your money gets worth less and your groceries become worth more, or more and more expensive, that they don't come around and say, okay, well, we're going to forgive some people for some things, right? And then it'll be a classic thing, and by classic I mean within classes, right? If you're in this class, you get forgiven, but if you're in this class, you don't get forgiven.
Yeah, I still don't think they'll forgive even one class of their debts, and I'll tell you why. So those other periods in history when they've played this card, they, as far as I know, that never happened while fiat currency was in use. So they weren't printing the money that people owed. So like the reason that ultimately this money, gets traded back and forth and around and has its value is because people make payments on the debt that created this thing.
I'm not an economist, but I think that the whole idea of Jubilee came about because of what we'll refer to historically as fiat, not modern fiat, but like think Roman fiat, where they're like shaving pieces off the coin and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not fiat. Like there is still a metal involved in that. Like and
fiat is something that is declared valuable by the king.
Right.
Right.
I mean, like you can have the point where like, okay, we demand that you pay as if this was completely made of gold, even though it's obviously not, and that's kind of fiat there. But since this has no like people call it intrinsic value, but like since it has no value except that people will pay their debts, I don't think that's a tool that's in their belt for this one.
Apparently, by the way, the question of these student loan payoffs at the federal level is currently at the Supreme Court, and a verdict is expected on it. But for now, it's all on hold. There's more coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump this week was charged over his alleged mishandling of classified documents after he left the White House. The twice-impeached former US president, who's again running for the White House, faces 37 criminal counts including conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, and illegally retaining classified documents under the Espionage Act. From Washington, D.C., Benji Hire reports.
It's his second indictment in as many months. This one could land him a prison sentence on conviction. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump, protesting his innocence, said he'd been summoned to appear at a federal court in Miami, Florida, on Tuesday afternoon. He'll be arrested there and hear the charges against him. What is this all about? Well, last year, his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago was searched by the FBI and 11,000 documents were seized. They included around 100 marked as classified, some labelled top secret. A separate investigation into Joe Biden's handling of documents continues. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
The French president has condemned the stabbing attack in southeast France that took place on Thursday, leaving 4 children needing intensive care. Ross Cullen has the latest.
Emmanuel Macron said that attacking children was the most barbaric act there is. He was speaking on Friday after visiting Annecy, where an attack took place on Thursday as a man stabbed adults and children in and around a playground in the southeast city in France. The French president also met members of the public who tried to intervene to stop the attack, saying that he was extremely proud of their efforts.
A major dam was destroyed in Ukraine on Tuesday, triggering what the United Nations calls a humanitarian, economic and ecological catastrophe. Moscow and Kyiv blame each other, and heavy flooding has forced thousands to evacuate the region. Journalist Tom Much has visited the Kherson region and reports from Odessa.
The Ukrainian government is warning that the worst of the flooding is still to come, that there could be a higher water level coming in the next 2 or 3 days. Again, this is actually going to affect Russian-occupied areas even worse because they're on the lower bank of the river.
Heavy smoke from Canada's wildfires impacted millions of people across parts of North America this week. On Tuesday, New York's air quality was briefly ranked as the worst in the world, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. President Biden's announced that more than 600 US firefighters have been sent north to help Canadian authorities battle the blazes. More than 200 fires are burning out of control. And former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is stepping down as a Member of Parliament, following the release of the Partygate report. The inquiry was examining whether he misled Parliament over whether Downing Street broke COVID lockdown rules. Johnson says the report is an attempt to drive him out. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the agonies of a Republican politician seeking to challenge Donald Trump for the party's presidential nomination, despite a long track record of slavishly backing him. Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, was one of several Republicans announcing presidential campaigns this week. Back in 2016, as governor, he was one of the first prominent Republican-elected lawmakers to back Trump in his quest for the presidency. Now, he says, he got it wrong.
What I was hoping to do by endorsing him early, recognizing that he had won in New Hampshire, he had won in South Carolina, and almost won in Iowa. He was the nominee. And I thought as a longtime friend, I could make him a better candidate and a better president. I was wrong.
He certainly changed his tune. Here was Chris Christie on the stump this week.
He is, for those of you who read the Harry Potter books, like Voldemort, who never admits a fault and who always finds someone else and something else to blame for whatever goes wrong. And there's this thing like, Christie doesn't really care about winning. All he cares about doing is destroying Trump. Now let me ask you something. How are those two things mutually exclusive? I am going out there to take out Donald Trump, but here's why. I want to win.
He has a long road ahead of him, garnering just 1% of support among Republican voters at the beginning of a 2024 primary process in which Donald Trump is still the runaway leader. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denzelo reporting.
The members of Twisted Sister announced they are now willing to take it. A local man is seated next to Lou Reed on a roller coaster, and in retrospect, a band teacher was probably gay. And now a digitally remastered recap of the summer's music news. Baby Baby Love Ya Girl is now the nation's #1 song, despite no one claiming credit for singing, writing, or producing it. Here now is a short excerpt of the track.
Baby, baby, love you, girl. Baby, baby, love you, girl. Baby.
Members of the music industry call the hit single the most creatively brain-dead wasteland in modern recording history. And they say they would gladly lose millions in royalties rather than face the shame of having been involved in it. After a slap-based filibuster from rubber band Minority Leader Bootsy Collins, the National Funk Congress remains deadlocked over the controversial Get Up, Get Down issue. Proponents of the measure favor getting on up and staying on the scene like a sex machine, while detractors are vehement in their belief that Americans need to get down with their bad selves.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. You are invited if you want to join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Peakless Mountaineer. I'm the captain.
We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. Somebody brought up banks tonight. And Peakless Mountaineer, you happen to have a story about one of those banks, Wells Fargo, one of the largest banks in the United States. And apparently, at least one branch is severely limiting cash withdrawals. And there's also a limit, maybe company-wide, on ATM withdrawals as well. We talk about that coming up here in a moment. But let's go first to Kev. He's calling us from Florida. Kev, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. I like listening to your show.
Welcome, Kev.
Wish we had a lot of time to go into a lot of stuff. But the Jubilee comment that you guys were talking about before, it's actually not a Roman tradition. It's an actual Old Testament tradition. I'm half Hebrew, half Irish, and a part Swedish. And it's what it is. It's a process of forgiveness. If you go back to the Old Testament, it's the story of Ruth and Naomi, and there was a redeemer in there. It has to do with a family that's been on a farm for like generations, and they didn't have a good crop or something. They would be able to go and get a loan to take care of their expenses. And if the land happened to be part of the loan, after 49 years, if they hadn't paid it back, all the debts were forgiven. It had something to do with a Solomonic tradition, or maybe it was King Saul. I forget which. It's been a couple of decades since I read it, but it's in there. And that's where the Jubilee concept came from, because, like, for example, in the story of Ruth and Naomi, they didn't have any male relatives because of some war or something that had happened. So they had no way to get their farm back. Mm-hmm. So they were working for somebody else's farm and, subsistence living. And then there was a relative or something, I forget the guy's name, Japheth or something like that, who came back from a war and was like this second or third cousin, and he could redeem their land, not only because he was the male family member, but he could also, take care of the loan. I think it had something to do with his military service or something. But that's where Jubilee came from. It's an old Hebrew tradition.
Yeah, I know it's older than Roman times, and
it's 2,000 or 3,000 years old at least.
Yeah, I probably misspoke. When I mentioned
no, you didn't, dude.
The Rome
you guys
fiat
got
currency,
so much stuff running around in your head trying to deal with all this stuff you're talking about. I know what it's like. I got 25, 30 years of research running around inside of my head.
Oh, nice. So I remember when I first heard the concept of Jubilee regarding like financial forgiveness, other than like somebody referring to,
correct.
Other than somebody referring to like, hey, we're having a party. It'll be a Jubilee.
Yeah.
Right? The first time I heard it was the guy's name was David Graeber. He's dead now, and he's a self-professed anarchist, although he came from the left. So he's the guy who was credited with
anarchy is not a bad thing as long as it has the purpose of not letting governments destroy people behind it.
Right.
Once you get too far into it, it gets to be chaotic.
So anyway, David Graeber wrote a book called Debt, the First 5,000 Years or something like that. Was the title of his book, and
That's pretty neat. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, he gave a variety of lectures, and one of them made it my way via YouTube, of course. It's lengthy. I think it's almost 3 hours long, but he gave a lecture based on his book, and that was the first time I was introduced to the concept of Jubilee, and he goes into a lot of the things you're saying about how ancient it is and how societies over the course of time have adopted this Jubilee from time to time when it was necessary for states to do so.
And you're correct in that it didn't exist with fiat, because the fiat is, throttle control, I mean throttle as in choking somebody, not throttle as in speed, by a bunch of those who have the, I don't really want to say power, but the resources that others don't have anymore, and they can force them to do whatever they want. Whereas the Jubilee concept was land-based, because back then
property-based
didn't really have loans from a bank. I mean, you grew your crop, you fed your family, you had your herds, or you were a craftsman, you made, carts or whatever it might be that people needed, like the older gentleman spoke about earlier, when you had the skills that people needed, like you guys talk about, value for services, so to speak. And that's why the Jubilee was it was part of the, not civil, but what's the other term for like church type stuff? You got civil.
Yeah.
You know the one I'm talking about. Not ecumenical, not Eucharistic.
Ecclesiastic.
Yes, ecclesiastic. It was ecclesiastic law. And that's one of the things that the
wait a minute.
English from the 900s, Old Testament law.
Wait, bear with me. Hear me out for just a second. What you're saying is that it's possible for one person with some means who maybe has a something resembling a bad crop in whatever their industry is. It's possible for them to survive that particular downturn by turning to his fellow man and pledging some of his property in return, meaning banks are completely useless and unnecessary? Yeah.
I love it.
Thanks, Kev. Appreciate your call tonight,
hold on.
man.
There's one other term that I need to give you.
Go ahead.
That you guys really need to do some research on. I'm going to spell it. It's CANQUE. It's called Kank. And it is an old, very old dynastic Han people, the Chinese Sino-Han area of the world. It goes into money, and it is extremely apropos for what is happening right now. You ever wonder why there is a hole in the middle of Chinese money?
That was so they could put it on a string.
No. When you look up the term CANQUE, be prepared. It's very graphic.
What are we going to find out? I mean, can you say it on the radio?
Find what
you mean?
Oh yeah. It's not one of the 7 deadly words. They used to cut people's heads off.
Yeah, at my first glance, I'm only finding it as a name. So can you give me a little help here?
And I found this in the 1914 Webster's New International Dictionary with 1918 addenda, a book I have in one of my libraries. And it's about 2,400 pages. It was an encyclopedic, amazing work of art when a dictionary was something that was extremely valued because, 1908, 1914, paper is very hard to make. And the term CANQUE, I actually have it on my computer if my computer's up and running because I scanned the pages in so I could have it to refer to. What it is, when the debtor had the loan, and they didn't finish paying it, what they did is they took a bunch of planks, usually it was like 2 foot by 2 foot or a 3 foot by 3 foot square. They cut the planks so that they could fit in a framework, a square framework, around the dead-oar's neck. I'm not making this up. This is what they used to use from 1640 to 1911, just before the Boxer Rebellion in China, when they destroyed the empire, before the Republic of China, before Mao's time. Okay. And what they did with those pieces of wood is they put like an iron band around it so you couldn't take it off of your neck. And the reason why it had to be so big is because you couldn't feed yourself because you hadn't paid your debt. And what they would do in the pictures that I have on my computer, I did the search.
Okay, so just before you go on, Kev, apparently this is spelled Cangue. So that's why it's so hard for us to find it.
It could be. My apologies.
No problem.
But you'll see the pictures, and what they would do is they would staple the loan in Chinese characters onto the wood.
Oh, so it's like scarlet lettering, except for debtors.
Could pay it. And that's exactly what they did to debtors for centuries.
Anybody who wanted to could pay the loan off and get their friend out of this thing, is what you're saying.
Or if the
stranger
debt credit arrangement was worse, they became your slave. And this is the other term that you might find when you do the lookup on it. It's called nexus, N-E-X-U-S. It is an ancient Roman tradition going back to the 12 Tables, wherein, and it was very, very barbaric, but and this is where I think the Roman mafiosos got the concept of cutting off a person's pinky, because in that concept of debtor and creditor, in the old Roman script, it was addicti, A-D-D-I-C-T-E-E, was exactly the term they used for the debtor-creditor arrangement. If that debtor didn't pay their loan back, the creditor or creditors were, and this is actually in an old dictionary from 1850, Bouvier, B-O-U-V-I-E-R. If you look him up, you can find in like Chest of Books or a bunch of different websites back in the 2010s and 2012 when I was doing my research, I found his dictionary, and they describe this other thing that they did with debtors.
This is the nexus thing you're talking about.
In the Roman tradition, which you guys were talking about earlier. So these are three different examples.
So what did they do? What was the nexus exactly? What was it the thing they did?
The debtor, the addictee, became the nexus between the creditor and any other creditors that he might have. You know, obviously, if you're in debt, you got to go borrow money for food, money for work, whatever it might be. And you became the nexus point and the primary debtor in the Roman tradition of nexus. This goes back to the 12 Tables. You'd have to look it up under the Roman 12 Tables. I think something BC to like 3 or 460 something AD. And the primary creditor took possession of the debtor, because back then you could have a slave. It was a common thing. You know, whether it was a slave to the household or somebody who had gotten into debt, they became a slave, obviously, to the creditor. And we really.
And then the creditor could. You're saying the creditor could use that person as a payment, to anybody that he owed a debt to.
Well, the creditor was owed the debt by that debtor.
Yeah.
And if the debtor hadn't paid it, he was the nexus. There's no longer any money involved. The nexus changed from the money to the debtor themselves.
I see. Wow. After a certain time frame, basically?
Yes, and you'll have to look it up in the Bouvier.
So you pay this debt off, or you become my slave, basically, is what the deal was.
And the nexus concept could be extrapolated that after a certain period of time, and going before not the senators, but the procurator. The procurator, I think, one of the Roman old court noble type, below the senators, but they were not the judge. They were like a page or like a pro tempore or something like that. Yeah. You could get a judgment against your debtor where if nobody paid the debt and it was significant enough, you were actually allowed to take the proportion of the capias and the debtor that your debt was reflected.
Kev,
within.
Thanks for calling and sharing. Very interesting history there. I appreciate hearing from you.
I did find the Wikipedia page for Kang.
Yep.
And it
That's
just
what
mentions
I was
because it restricts a person's movements. This is they show a picture.
It's got a picture of the
one.
guy.
Yeah. Because it restricts a person's movements, it was common for people wearing Kangs to starve to death as they were unable to feed themselves.
Right. It was just long enough to where your hands couldn't reach your mouth or whatever.
So you had to rely on others around you to feed you at all.
It says they weighed about up to 160 pounds.
Whoa.
So imagine carrying, almost another 200-pound person along with you wherever you went.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty crazy. CANGUE. So if you want to comment, you can bring up anything you want. Ricky's on the line, calling from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Ricky.
Thank you there, Brother Ian, Brother Captain. Peakless Mountaineer, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, tonight I've been meaning to do this one. I will say, growing up in northeastern Pennsylvania, I was about an hour and a half from New York City, and I heard from little on up a lot about the Donald. That's being Donald J. Trump. Particularly people that work for him doing building projects, and his famous thing is either A, I didn't like it, or B, it isn't good enough to sue me. And then you go out through the years, so on and so forth, there's more of that. But that brings me to modern day, and that's these documents. And I have an interesting observation, but before I go into that, just a quick rehash of what led to the Mar-a-Lago raid. Now, starting from January 2021, he had to leave the White House. Now, in this case, it wasn't some accidental thing by staffers. He told the staffers what to pack. They knew. And he could have declassified them, but he didn't have an interest in that, and there's reason for that. So some bunch of time went on. Eventually, the National Archives said, hey, there's a bunch of this stuff missing. They contacted him. Give him back. He says, no. Okay, fine. They contacted again. He says, no. Eventually, it got harder and heavier. There were subpoenas. Finally, they got a court order, and then you had the FBI come in. He was told, he was over in Westminster. They came, then there was a write-up, said, okay, by the Bob woman who was the lawyer, by Evan Cochran, his head lawyer. Then they got all the documents. Well, that turned out to be a lie. Well, they came back because they got more. And to this day, it went on and on and on. Now, the question is why? First of all, why didn't he declassify them? Well, there's a reason for that. For the same reason he tried so hard to hold on to these. Now, I'm looking at not the crap stuff, but the stuff.
Well, what's the reason?
Up to that's twice you've told us there's a reason. What is it, Ricky?
Here's the reason. It's coming. This is it right now. It goes from classified to top secret compartmentalized. Those are the touchy ones.
Ricky,
now,
get on with it.
Here's the point. He only gives a damn about one thing, money. Now, I have no love for the
he loves attention.
What he wants over this, it's called extortion. And that's the scary part, because I don't care if you got the Secret Service protecting him, they would have got him. So I'm glad they
hold on, let me see if I'm following you. You're saying you think Donald Trump didn't declassify the documents that he's now facing charges over because he wanted to use them to extort people for money?
Absolutely. And because let's face it, top secret compartmentalized.
Who's he going to extort? I mean, government bureaucrats?
Huh?
Who is he going to extort? Government bureaucrats?
Maybe even beyond that, because when you're dealing
He's got money, though. That's the thing. I think, Peakless, you pointed this out before. Trump isn't about money.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of money. He wants power. He wants attention.
Well, no, he's not even about power. And that's really the difference between him and your run-of-the-mill politician. And that's why they hate him so much, is because he's not easy to manipulate. Mm-hmm. Now, you can manipulate someone, an ordinary politician, quite easily. You just have to threaten to take away their power. Mm-hmm. So, for any ordinary politician, something like, hey, we will impeach you, you won't be president anymore, that is so scary that they will keep in line because that is such a loss of power. With Trump, that doesn't work because power's not what he wants anyway. He wants fame.
So you don't buy Ricky's theory then?
No, not even remotely. No, and that's the thing. He wants fame. He wants to be the most famous person on earth for all time. That is his end game.
It will be the greatest, most famous person.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call, Ricky.
And that's why the manipulations on him don't work very well because, well, we'll impeach you. You mean I'll be one of the only presidents ever impeached? Awesome.
So did he not declassify the documents just because he's an F-up?
I have no idea why he last I had heard, like, these are the same documents, right? That they raided Mar-a-Lago for?
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, last I heard, like, one of his last acts while he was still president was to say, I'm declassifying any of the documents that I happen to have on my person. So... And honestly, I think this is all ridiculous. Look, if we trusted this guy with these documents, why is he not allowed to have them now? Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me.
Oh, because he's not the president is what they're saying.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Okay, so go get the documents back.
They did.
Okay, problem solved.
They want to charge him with felonies over this.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to comment, you can join the show. Here, the number is 603-283-6160. But what you guys predicted earlier,
show must go on.
Earlier in the program is that you don't think this is going to go anywhere. You think that these charges are going to either fail in front of a jury or some other thing is going to happen.
It will be a media production, the likes of which we have seen repeatedly.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what'll happen. Is it'll go all the way through the circus
CNN
to a jury.
and Fox top stories, right? All the legacy news outlets are going to be running away with this thing all the time. Both sides are going to think that they're right, and it's going to just further divide people.
You mean a jury selected in Florida had at least one partisan conservative? Shocking. So, yeah, that's probably what this whole thing is going to do, but it's very distracting, and because that's tremendously important. They don't want you paying attention to the bank collapse. They don't want you paying attention to the potential of nuclear war. Like, these are the things they'd rather you not talk about. So let's talk about transsexuals and Donald Trump.
Yep, that sounds about right.
And it is absolutely perfect because it casts him as a criminal in the minds of all of the people who hate him.
Who already thought he was a criminal.
Right. But it gives them extra fuel, extra he did this. Like, there's a reason he went. There's a reason.
See,
that he
I told you
keeps
so.
Yeah, he's a criminal. See, even the courts say he's a criminal. Yeah, it reinforces that line because that's the thing. When you don't have Donald Trump for them to hate, they're going to go home and smoke pot. They don't care about politics unless it's Orange Man.
Right.
Orange Man gets them out to the polls. Orange Man gets them motivated, unified with each other so that instead of squabbling over, well, my form of socialism is better than your form of socialism. No. They're all unified against Orange Man bad. And the people on the right, they get unified about, see, I told you, he's a rabble-rouser, he's a revolutionary, he's going to change everything. The good people in the military are going to arrest Hillary Clinton any minute now.
And as I like to call them, the pitchfork people and the torch people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, they get unified in their division only. Right? Yeah. That's the only place these people become unified together is in their hatred for the other side, whatever that is. They can't see what's wrong with that.
And to be fair, they're both rather worthy of hate.
Yes, indeed. The phone number here, if you want to join the show, it's 603-283-6160. You can bring up absolutely anything you want, your comments on any of the things we've discussed or things still to come, like the Wells Fargo cash withdrawal restriction. We can talk about that coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
There is no such thing as attention span, according to Jerry Seinfeld, who figures that people have an infinite attention span if you are entertaining them. Hey, he's kept us from channel surfing for several decades, and now he's making more millions as a Las Vegas headliner. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're looking for work. So choose every single word as though it was the last word the person you're speaking to will hear. Otherwise, it might be. Avoid redundancies such as added bonus, advance warning, end result, prior history, or personal belongings. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump this week was charged over his alleged mishandling of classified documents after he left the White House. The twice impeached former US president, who's again running for the White House, faces 37 criminal counts including conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, and illegally retaining classified documents under the Espionage Act. From Washington, D.C., Benji Hire reports.
It's his second indictment in as many months. This one could land him a prison sentence on conviction. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump, protesting his innocence, said he'd been summoned to appear at a federal court in Miami, Florida, on Tuesday afternoon. He'll be arrested there and hear the charges against him. What is this all about? Well, last year, his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago was searched by the FBI and 11,000 documents were seized. They included around 100 marked as classified, some labelled top secret. A separate investigation into Joe Biden's handling of documents continues. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
The French president has condemned the stabbing attack in southeast France that took place on Thursday, leaving 4 children needing intensive care. Ross Cullen has the latest.
Emmanuel Macron said that attacking children was the most barbaric act there is. He was speaking on Friday after visiting Annecy, where an attack took place on Thursday as a man stabbed adults and children in and around a playground in the southeast city in France. The French president also met members of the public who tried to intervene to stop the attack, saying that he was extremely proud of their efforts.
A major dam was destroyed in Ukraine on Tuesday, triggering what the United Nations calls a humanitarian, economic and ecological catastrophe. Moscow and Kyiv blame each other, and heavy flooding has forced thousands to evacuate the region. Journalist Tom Much has visited the Kherson region and reports from Odessa.
The Ukrainian government is warning that the worst of the flooding is still to come, that there could be a higher water level coming in the next 2 or 3 days. Again, this is actually going to affect Russian-occupied areas even worse because they're on the lower bank of the river.
Heavy smoke from Canada's wildfires impacted millions of people across parts of North America this week. On Tuesday, New York's air quality was briefly ranked as the worst in the world, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. President Biden's announced that more than 600 US firefighters have been sent north to help Canadian authorities battle the blazes. More than 200 fires are burning out of control. And former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is stepping down as a Member of Parliament, following the release of the Partygate report. The inquiry was examining whether he misled Parliament over whether Downing Street broke COVID lockdown rules. Johnson says the report is an attempt to drive him out. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Yes, it is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open for you. Should you wish to join us, you can comment on things we've been discussing, or you can bring up anything that's on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you this hour by Dash. It's digital cash, a cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending, and it is on a big sale. There's been a huge drop in
Crypto's on sale.
Cryptocurrency prices, especially the so-called altcoins, within the last 24 hours or so, dropped like 10%. So I think Dash was down earlier today to like $29 for one Dash. Dash, by the way, is particularly useful because, well, it's designed to be used for spending. And so you can send a Dash transaction for well under 1 cent per transaction. Compare that to Bitcoin, where you might be spending $2 to send one transaction, which is ridiculous. And Dash has some really cool features that ensure that it's undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. They got From a technical standpoint, it's nailed down. Their transactions are irreversible. The network is protected from 51% attacks by their chain locks technology, and there's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies available, and it's widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get. It's easy to use Dash. You can start by learning more at dash.org. You can, and by the way, big thanks to the Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can visit dash.org to learn about Dash. That is dash.org. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. Shauna is on the line listening to KXLY in Spokane, Washington. Go ahead, Shauna.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Oh, okay. So I just don't think that you guys are right when you say that Trump is after fame. I think you're right when you say he cannot be controlled and he's not a politician. And I think that's why they're afraid of him. He went into politics purely because he saw what was wrong in the world and with our current system of things.
How do you know
Yeah,
this?
I'm sure that he is just an absolutely pure-hearted angel.
Why would you say he's not?
Well,
wow.
Well, because he's a mass murderer, for one.
Well, hold on. Why, Shauna?
Trump's a mass murderer?
Yeah, like
Yes.
every president ever. They're all mass murderers.
Like, do you even know about Yemen? Do you know about the genocide that he contributed to while president? I mean,
Well, okay,
remember,
but when
this
you
is the
say-
guy.
I mean, okay, yeah, your every president has to do things that are not
They don't have to.
easy and make decisions.
He doesn't have to.
They don't have to.
No, he could just withdraw the troops from all over the place if he wanted to.
Oh, just like Biden did.
No,
No,
Biden
none of
did
them
not
do.
withdraw troops from anywhere except Afghanistan.
None of them do, because this is how
That's what I'm talking
psychopathy
about.
works. This is how psychopathy works. You get some power, and you want more of it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that Biden
I
isn't a monster.
totally
I'm saying
disagree.
Trump is also a monster.
Oh, no. I'm not. Okay, nobody is an angel. Let's, be for real. And being
Our
president
former
isn't
co-host?
something that
Nobody?
you step into. What's that?
Don't worry about it.
Never mind.
What were you saying?
I said nobody steps into being president and not realizing the immense, obviously, power that you're going to have. I mean, that's a given with the position. I don't think he stepped into that necessarily as the driving force behind it. Not at all. I totally disagree with that.
What makes you believe that? Like, how do you
Well,
know
okay,
what
have
Trump's
you ever- okay, I
motivation or thoughts are?
He said what his motivation was, and there's numerous
Wow.
interviews. Do you remember the interview? Why do you say "wow"? Like,
Because you believe someone
you
who
say, and then I
wants
say
you to
something and you say,
believe.
wow.
So, okay, I don't trust anyone who is trying to get my vote just because they say a thing that it is true.
I mean, the fact is, you look at politicians; they lie all the time to get elected. So why would you believe
Sure,
this
but
guy?
he's not a politician. That's
Yes,
the
he is. By
problem.
definition, he's a
Truly-
politician.
No, he's not.
By definition, if you run
That's
for
why-
office,
that's
you
why
are a
he busts
politician.
people. It's because he's not.
Madam,
that's
if you
why he
run for
does
office, you are by definition a politician. Now, if you want to say it was his first time, or you want to say he's never been elected to anything before,
He is not your run-of-the-mill, been in the Senate.
Yeah, he
been
is
a
different.
governor, done
He's
all those
instead
things
of
to
being a
work his
power
way
addict,
up.
he's a fame addict.
All the same things that you're saying, Shauna, were said about another president, Ronald Reagan, who was an actor before he was a.
Yeah, but wasn't he the
He was
governor?
not a politician.
Wasn't he
Do
the
you say
California
the same
governor?
thing about him? Do you think he was after fame?
Yes, he's an actor. What do you think actors are after?
Well, he
You
may
know
have been
what?
after
The
power
thing
as well.
It's like making movies is what's fame. Being a president, that is the
Did
worst
Trump
kind
not
of
do
fame. If that's what
television?
he's after,
Did Trump not do television
Yes,
before
that's the point.
presidency? Right?
Yeah,
Is
if-
that not acting?
why didn't you just
The man
continue
has-
doing that then?
Because
The man
he
has-
wanted more.
If he
He
wants
has spent
fame,
more time on television than anybody. Full stop. The man has spent more
You're
time on
fired.
television than anybody. Seriously,
I
look
think
at how
you're
much
wrong. I
every single news station, every single day, all they would ever talk about for like a year was Trump.
They kept talking about it after he was out of office as
So
well.
let me ask you this: you say he's a murderer and he's all of these evil, all of these things, and let's just let's just go with that. Then who would you pick? Who would be? You have to vote. You have to vote for somebody.
No, you don't.
So
I don't vote. I don't have to vote for anybody. You know why? I don't need a leader. I'm perfectly
you can't say
capable
anything.
of leading myself. Where the hell is everybody going that we need all these leaders for anyway? I'm perfectly capable of representing myself, and I am the captain of myself. Yes. I don't need a politician. I don't need to follow a politician when I can do me by myself.
Unfortunately, though, I agree. I 100% like that idea.
Okay.
We have moral compasses. We know right from wrong. We're probably not going to run out and murder thousands of people or millions of people because we're good, decent humans, right?
Well, I'm not sure that people. Hold on, Shauna. I think generally what you're saying is true. Like on a day-to-day living basis, most people do know right from wrong. They are not going to use violence against their neighbor because they can understand they wouldn't want their neighbor using violence against them. However, people seem to have a disconnect when it comes to the political process and the thing that we call government. They don't seem to understand that they are ignoring the wrong that this organization known as the state, whether it's the state of Washington or the United States federal government, is constantly committing. And they ignore that these men and women that are seeking these political powerful offices are using violence against them and their neighbors on a regular basis. And they just seem to forgive all of that. They believe that the next guy that's waving their in front of them saying, elect me, is going to somehow be different than everyone who's come before. And it never is true.
But you know what? Here's the biggest problem with any of. I agree with what you say for the most part. Like I truly do. I think our biggest problem is the World Economic Forum.
Well, they are a problem.
And Klaus Schwab. That is where if you want to talk about people getting killed and who's behind lots of the shenanigans there, he's the one to look at.
Sure, the UN, the World Economic Forum, the IMF, these are terrible organizations that are advocating for greater state involvement in people's lives, more government, more control, more money. But if you agree with what I said earlier, then I presume you would agree that the United States as an organization should not exist. It's run its course. It should be completely abolished. People should secede as quickly as possible. The state of Washington, New Hampshire, wherever it is that people are listening, should secede from the United States, and we should just call it a day and say this has failed. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I don't know. I mean, how do you in a perfect world, and that could happen and everything would be okay. I don't think that. That's a tough one. Like, I like the idea behind that. I totally can. I see where you're going, and
so it could happen.
I just don't know how.
Right? Because it has happened before. I mean, there's a long history of secession.
The Constitution. I know there's a portion in there, and I'm gonna mess it up. But it talks about like basically reforming government, like and restructuring it. There's like a way to do that.
The ability to reform or abolish.
Yes. So I mean,
that's not the Constitution.
It could happen. I mean,
Declaration.
That's the Declaration of Independence.
Sorry, my bad.
Well, and that's the thing. Look, if the Declaration of Independence is considered valid, then let's just end this. Like, we don't have to go through a process. We can just stop. If we just stop acknowledging this as a legitimate source of authority on the basis of the fact that it continues to murder people for no good reason, for example, then we could just end it. It could be over like that.
Right.
Just
then
done. Like, we don't have to. We don't have to wait on our senators to tell us that it's okay to be free.
Right. Yeah. No, I am full on board with all of that. 100%.
All right. Good.
People are looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm sitting in a Target parking lot.
Just pronounce it Target. You'll be okay.
Well, good. I'm glad that we've agreed on so much here tonight, Shauna. Thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate hearing from you.
Call us again.
Yeah, absolutely. The number here is 603-283-6160. It's interesting, bringing up independence as a solution to these problems out there. And of course, the problems are that people are divided as ever. They're not going to come together on anything ever again. Like this whole experiment is an abject failure at this point. If it did work for a time, great. It ain't working now, and it hasn't worked for generations.
And they can't come together because it's the stakes are way too high. The government has so much power that if the other guy gets to force you to live the way that they want you to live, then you will never be able to retain your life.
Well, and that's the thing that people have to let go of, is the desire to try to force the other side back into whatever compliance with whatever
That's
arbitrary
exactly
things.
it.
So you have to be able to let that go and say, you know what, you guys can do you. You guys in California, you hard left socialists or whatever, you go ahead, have your socialist paradise. You guys down in Texas, you can go ahead and have your right-wing theocracy or whatever it is you're trying to build there. You guys over in New Hampshire, you guys can have your libertarian homeland, and we'll just all do our own thing separately and see what works.
Yeah.
You just have to let it go. Let them do their thing.
And Shauna, the caller, had asked, well, then what's next? Well, what's next, of course, is...
That's the question.
A period of prosperity and innovation in humankind, the likes of which we've only seen a few times in history.
Unless you're in California and it goes total commie.
Okay, but I'm just...
Well, no, even... And so that's the
mankind
thing.
in general, right?
If they try out their communist plans and they fall flat on their face, as I believe they will, then at that point they will be forced to do something else, which will mean, they'll be late to the party, but they will also experience a period of innovation and growth, the likes of which humankind has never even dreamt.
And we have the best evidence to say that is what would happen.
Yeah.
And the best evidence is, of course, the history of the United States itself.
Right.
Before the government ruined currency, before the federal government decided it was going to be the ruler of everybody instead of the other way around where everybody was the ruler of it, right? What happened? The United States experienced a period of growth, innovation, and invention, the likes of which humankind had never seen before.
Arguably, we're still coasting on that.
Oh, absolutely.
I
would
think we're
say
well
that
beyond that.
I would say that planet Earth is coasting on that innovation, on what happened during that period of freedom. Like, that changed things so dramatically that we are still attempting to adapt to, for example, the general absence of starving to death due to an absence of calories.
Yeah.
Like, we on Earth haven't fully adapted to that change yet. And that's awesome. And we need to do that again. This time with the internet.
We continue here. Caller unscreened. You're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
My name's Carl.
Carl, you're on the air. What's on your mind tonight?
I reckon I was here on this Twitch app here, and I stumbled upon your thing. I like that young Neil deGrasse Tyson boy. And you Steve from Blue's Clues over yonder.
Okay, you might be watching a different show than what you're calling in about, but what were you calling about tonight?
I was calling in about, politics and football.
Uh-huh. What about it?
Well, you got that Archman, and he's going over yonder to, where's he going? I believe it's Texas.
Who? Archman?
Yeah, Archman. And
Captain, you pay attention to the football scene.
I think he's
What's he talking
about Archie Manning, who's, an ancient relic in the football world.
Okay.
So
I thought he said Orange Man.
Orange Man.
Oh, Orange Man. No, Archie Manning is Peyton Manning and Eli Manning's father. They were both quarterbacks recently in the NFL.
So we're talking about
last
like
decade
30
or so.
years ago?
No, I believe you're wrong there. That's her brother. And he had a son. And there's a new Manning coming up in college football this year.
There is a new Manning.
So he's like a junior?
There's a junior Arch. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
You put you in your place there, Captain. You didn't have your football stats.
When you're
your trivia.
When you're working hard to freedom all the time, you lose track of your sports ball.
All right, man. What's going on down there in Florida? I see you're calling from Florida. Any interesting Florida news for us?
I reckon there's a lot of meth and people doing weird stuff and whatnot.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for the call tonight. Kind of,
you don't get them any prospectors that love Twitch.
Yeah, no, it was a good accent.
awesome.
It was a good accent. It just didn't have much depth to it.
Yeah.
It didn't have a good plan for the call. Like we've had some really good character callers over the years, and the best ones are the ones who can improvise real good. I mean, it's hard to do that.
It is, yeah.
The second best ones are the ones that have a plan when they call up. They got some points that they want to make. They got something for the character to say rather than just kind of I like football. You got to put a little more into it than that. But I like the voice. The voice is
I think that's what
on.
he was trying out.
Yeah,
he was seeing if that worked. And hey, I was expecting you to bust out an authentic frontier gibberish at any moment.
and if I were like a working stand-up comedian, I might do something like call into radio shows to try out my characters.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's continue here. We've got a real prospector. Major Payne is on the line in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
But
was in Tijuana eating barbecued iguana. I got some
Mexican radio?
Yeah.
They put out a statewide, I don't know if they want to call it a warning or a notice or whatever, but there's snakes and iguanas and what are them other damn geckos popping up in people's toilets all over Florida.
That happens.
I was wondering if you'd been down there raising hell again, Ian, since your last hurricane.
It just happens.
Do you
sometimes.
only get one hurricane named after you?
I think they have a schedule. They rotate the names.
Oh,
through.
really? So you'll have another one at some point.
Good chance of it. Yeah, at some point. It just probably won't be a big one.
I have to know, is there also a hurricane mark?
I bet you there has been. Yeah, I mean, they go through the names. All right, what else, Major?
Well, just on the Trump thing, the day they announced that they were filing all these charges before they even released, 37 and what they were and whatnot, two of his lawyers reclined or declined. They abolished themselves from the case. So the powers that be are obviously turning up the heat in the boiling pot. And I don't understand how anybody can't see. They started persecuting Trump when he walked down the staircase in New York, just announcing his presidency. They've been on him like a duck on a June bug ever since, trying to make any damn thing and anything stick. Just throw a turd against the wall, see if it works.
I'm sorry, Major, a duck on a June bug?
It's a real phrase.
That is some great English.
If you've ever seen a real farm, ducks are the best pesticide you can get.
Oh, yeah.
You take a flock of ducks and run them through your garden, they'll clean out the ladybugs and the potato bugs, and hell, the best alarm you can have on a farm is a good dog, but more importantly, a goose. Though they have no ears, they can hear every damn thing.
Thanks for the call, Major. I appreciate hearing from you, man. Let's go to the real McCoy. You're on Free Talk Live, calling from somewhere out there. Go ahead.
Colorado.
Welcome, sir.
How do we know he's really the real McCoy, not just somebody calling and saying he's the real McCoy? Is there a McCoy verification system we can deploy?
Maybe on the blockchain.
All right, there you go.
There we go.
Good answer.
All right, it's the real McCoy. You're verified.
All right, go ahead.
So, just real quick, this wasn't going to be an in-depth call too much. So throughout the week, callers have been questioning what defines the non-aggression principle and what does and doesn't constitute aggression.
Yeah, okay.
I have 3 questions. I have them listed out. They're mostly rhetorical. If you want to answer just one, that's fine. But the first one is, why does the statement non-aggression principle cause so much confusion with people? 2, why does Arya argue, and I know this is a gross generalization of her argument, but why can't definitions in the dictionary be used when arguing for or against positions an individual holds, if that makes sense? 3, is it not best to consult the dictionary so the parties involved that are arguing have a standard of cohesion when it comes to meaning and understanding of one another?
To take the third question last, having not heard the discussion to which you're referring to between Arya and the other co-hosts on, I think, Wednesday night on that show, that I would say, yeah, I mean, you have to be able to agree on a definition of a word before you can have any kind of meaningful discussion about it. If you can't come to an agreement on that, then you might as well not bother trying to go any further. And whether you want to use a dictionary for that or come up with your own house definition.
Right. I was just going to say, within that, it's between the two parties who are trying to have the communication. They're the ones who need to agree on the definition. So is a dictionary a good tool? I believe it is. I use it all the time. When I don't know
have
where
the same definition.
They don't. No. But when I learn of a new word, I will go look it up. I will look at several different dictionary entries just to make sure I've explored all the different possible definitions, or at least the ones that are at my fingertips on the magic rectangle.
Yeah.
But it is important. But it's not important for the dictionary to be like the be-all, end-all reference of the definition.
It's a tool, not an authority. So, for example, Merriam-Webster altered the definition of the word literally to include as if literally, which to my mind completely negates the whole value of the word. Like, if literally does not mean literally, then it means nothing at all. We don't have any other word that means that. It's the only word, and no matter how many times people misuse the word literally, it still means what it means.
Didn't they also change a bunch of words during COVID as well?
Oh, yeah.
In Merriam-Webster?
Oh, yeah.
And they keep doing it over time as well. Governments will do it.
So this is some straight up 1984 nonsense. Like 1984, they also touched on it in The Giver, but this idea of having a grand unified dictionary of the authority says this is what these words mean.
Yep.
And they can pare it down so that certain ideas become no longer possible to discuss.
You can't express them.
Yeah, and that's very true. And so, like, to touch on his first question of like what's so hard about non-aggression principle? Well, because people are not used to thinking that thought.
No, it's
true.
true.
It is a foreign thought.
Even as I'm a relative newcomer to the idea, at least here in the studio. I think I get it, but when you begin to think about your actions and your daily life and how you live it and where is aggression, right? When you begin to think about it, you don't see it all right away. It takes a while, for you to be thinking in the mindset of where's the aggression? How do I not commit aggression in these situations? Because I guarantee you, if you're not thinking about this already, you are committing aggression in some instances in your life. Right. And even to that extent, I'm human, so I'm fallible, and I'm going to probably commit some aggression at some point in my life. Right. Maybe even unbeknownst to me. But it is difficult, and it is a road to travel to get to a point where you can live the non-aggression principle. It is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, and I would personally love to take a crack at the question that usually comes up by that one caller about, well, you can't raise children without violating the non-aggression principle. I'd love to take a crack at that one.
Okay, we can talk about it. Real McCoy, if you have more to say, hang on. We'll continue, give you a response here. In hour number 3, which is on the way, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join the show, and you can also bring up anything that you want to discuss with us here on the live Saturday edition of Free Talk Live. We got more coming up.
Free Talk Live.
In order for this government to be legitimate, it had to have been legitimate in the first place. And that means that every person who was involved, who was on the North American continent at the time, had to have agreed to it. And if it was set up by force, if it was set up at the point of a bayonet, then it wouldn't be legitimate. It wouldn't be any more legitimate than me sticking a knife in your ribs and saying, give me your wallet. Oh, you gave me the wallet. It's legitimate. So the very fact that this government was set up by force, it was set up by killing other people, means that it's not legitimate.
That doesn't even go into the fact that everyone who set it up is long dead. It's been assumed to be this real thing, this valid thing, because of the magic scroll. They wrote a magic scroll. You know, they got out a piece of paper and wrote it down, and voila, and now it's a real thing that has legitimacy, right?
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Weekend Review. Donald Trump this week was charged over his alleged mishandling of classified documents after he left the White House. The twice impeached former US president, who's again running for the White House, faces 37 criminal counts including conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, and illegally retaining classified documents under the Espionage Act. From Washington, D.C., Benji Hire reports.
It's his second indictment in as many months. This one could land him a prison sentence on conviction. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump, protesting his innocence, said he'd been summoned to appear at a federal court in Miami, Florida, on Tuesday afternoon. He'll be arrested there and hear the charges against him. What is this all about? Well, last year, his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago was searched by the FBI and 11,000 documents were seized. They included around 100 marked as classified, some labelled top secret. A separate investigation into Joe Biden's handling of documents continues. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
The French president has condemned the stabbing attack in southeast France that took place on Thursday, leaving 4 children needing intensive care. Ross Cullen has the latest.
Emmanuel Macron said that attacking children was the most barbaric act there is. He was speaking on Friday after visiting Annecy, where an attack took place on Thursday as a man stabbed adults and children in and around a playground in the southeast city in France. The French president also met members of the public who tried to intervene to stop the attack, saying that he was extremely proud of their efforts.
A major dam was destroyed in Ukraine on Tuesday, triggering what the United Nations calls a humanitarian, economic and ecological catastrophe. Moscow and Kyiv blame each other, and heavy flooding has forced thousands to evacuate the region. Journalist Tom Much has visited the Kherson region and reports from Odessa.
The Ukrainian government is warning that the worst of the flooding is still to come, that there could be a higher water level coming in the next 2 or 3 days. Again, this is actually going to affect Russian-occupied areas even worse because they're on the lower bank of the river.
Heavy smoke from Canada's wildfires impacted millions of people across parts of North America this week. On Tuesday, New York's air quality was briefly ranked as the worst in the world, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. President Biden's announced that more than 600 US firefighters have been sent north to help Canadian authorities battle the blazes. More than 200 fires are burning out of control. And former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is stepping down as a Member of Parliament, following the release of the Partygate report. The inquiry was examining whether he misled Parliament over whether Downing Street broke COVID lockdown rules. Johnson says the report is an attempt to drive him out. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the agonies of a Republican politician seeking to challenge Donald Trump for the party's presidential nomination, despite a long track record of slavishly backing him. Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, was one of several Republicans announcing presidential campaigns this week. Back in 2016, as governor, he was one of the first prominent Republican-elected lawmakers to back Trump in his quest for the presidency. Now, he says, he got it wrong.
What I was hoping to do by endorsing him early, recognizing that he had won in New Hampshire, he had won in South Carolina, and almost won in Iowa. He was the nominee. And I thought as a longtime friend, I could make him a better candidate and a better president. I was wrong.
He certainly changed his tune. Here was Chris Christie on the stump this week.
He is, for those of you who read the Harry Potter books, like Voldemort, who never admits a fault and who always finds someone else and something else to blame for whatever goes wrong. And there's this thing like, Christie doesn't really care about winning. All he cares about doing is destroying Trump. Now let me ask you something. How are those two things mutually exclusive? I am going out there to take out Donald Trump, but here's why. I want to win.
He has a long road ahead of him, garnering just 1% of support among Republican voters at the beginning of a 2024 primary process in which Donald Trump is still the runaway leader. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denzelo reporting.
Regarded by many as one of the fastest rising online personalities today, social media rock star Ryan Wasserman has 250,000 loyal Twitter followers and earns $28,000 a year at his job as an administrative assistant. The Onion spoke to the online luminary at KPL Insurance, where he works from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and makes roughly $13 an hour.
I'm just trying to bring my unique perspective to everybody. That's what my followers expect, and I like to think I deliver.
Wasserman, who currently has $900 in his checking account, regularly engages in conversations with high-profile celebrities and takes the bus to work from the two-bedroom apartment he shares with a 23-year-old he met on Craigslist.
Actually, I just started a Tumblr because sometimes 140 characters just doesn't cut it. I just had a Google Glass tweet that Questlove retweeted again. KPL, this is Ryan. Yeah, I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. Phones are open. We're kicking off the third hour. And, of course, we'll talk to you about whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Getting a fair number of radio listeners calling in tonight, which I'm always happy about. So we will get back to the phone calls and your thoughts here in moments. Here with you, it's Ian.
Peakless Mountaineer.
And the Reverend Captain Kickass.
Just a moment ago, we had a gentleman on the line. He did drop off the line shortly after that segment, so I guess he had said his piece or asked his questions, and he wanted to move on. But Peakless, you had something you wanted to address in regards to one of the questions, which was about the idea of the non-aggression principle. For listeners that aren't familiar, that's sort of the bedrock principle of libertarianism, the idea that it's not okay to use the threat of violence or actual violence against our neighbors in order to get them to behave in a certain way, essentially.
Right.
And so you were going to say you wanted to address the question of the non-aggression principle in regards to raising children,
right?
As there was a previous discussion about this.
Yeah, and this comes up very frequently, honestly, about like, well, wait a second, when you're raising a kid, you have to make choices for them, and by all appearances, like you have to treat them in a way that it would not be okay for you to treat an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, well, that child wanted to cross the street right then, but you grabbed them out of the street because you didn't feel that it was safe for them to cross at that point.
Right.
If you treated an adult like that, that would be weird at the very least, and kind of and potentially aggressive. So here's the thing about just broad stroke. Here's how the whole thing works with raising children. They are in trust to you. So there's this thing called a trust where, like, I can give you a piece of my property and you have to act on my behalf with that property. Now, you can't take that. It would be a violation of the trust if you went, oh, well, you've given me $100. Well, I'm going to go spend that at the tracks on my own gambling, or I'm going to go, buy some gold with it and put it in my safe, or, all these things. You have to act for my benefit and not for your own. So children, their entire lives, like, everything that they are, their bodies, their any property that they earn during that period of time, they are entrusted to what we call the parent or guardian, but really it's the trustee. So during this period of time, because it's just a thing that happens, you are born stupid. You do not know how this world works. You are incapable of all the things.
And dependent on your mother.
Exactly.
For food and, nourishment and care and shelter, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And your father, too.
Now, that stupidity goes away over time. And it's very similar to the idea of, like, if someone is drunk and you are their friend, you might really want to look out for them. And you might keep them from doing stupid things because you know them and you're going to act in their best interest. And when they are sober, you expect them to be glad that you kept them from doing these stupid things.
You're going to hold their hair while they worship the porcelain god?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we all come into this world with approximately 0 capabilities. We can eat and poop, and that's about it, and scream. That's really all we can do.
About the same way we go out.
Yeah. Now, over time, we gain the ability to make informed and complete decisions. Now, this is biology, so there's not a nice cut and dry, it is precisely 18, in which you are definitely capable of doing all the things, no matter who you are. But we do our best to figure this out. And we know that it happens at some point that you become a full adult. And that's an unfortunate fact of our cultures, that we don't actually have that, like, hey, you are now a complete adult.
Well, we don't really have a cultural barometer for that, because the only barometer we have is the legal barometer.
Right.
Which makes absolutely no sense.
Right. So if somebody is far advanced in their thought process and their maturity at age, 17, for example, but somebody who's 29 is still, they don't quite get how to take care of themselves, there's no cultural phenomenon to account for these things.
And I think there's a very easy way to do that, and it's just when they can fend for themselves.
Let's go to the phones here. I got Joy on the line. She's listening also in Spokane to KXLY. Hello, Joy.
I jumped.
Hi there.
Hey, Joy.
Spokane.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, way to go, Ian. Your non-regional dialect is showing.
Yeah, and it's Gonzaga, not Gonzaga. But anyway.
I know these things because I lived in Washington State for a while, but no one else knows these things.
I've never gone Zaga.
What's on your mind, Joy?
I'm I guess too black and white type of person, but I just don't understand how the world that you describe or allude to works in our world right now, with 360 million people in our country and such close. I mean, the world is so close with technology and everything else. How does what you talk about, how can it be implemented?
So just to clarify,
day-to-day life?
What we talk about is already implemented in day-to-day life, right? So when you go around in your life and you go shopping, or you go to work, or you go see some friends, or whatever it is that you're going to do, you don't put a gun up against somebody's head and tell them what to do, right?
Voluntarism is everywhere.
You interact with people on a voluntary basis, on a consensual basis. Somebody wants to sell you something, you understand that you have to pay for it. You're willing to do these things. You don't go around attacking your friends to get them to do the things that you want them to do. You don't threaten them to come see a movie with you, or go play golf, or whatever it is that you want to do. So most people, the supermajority of them, already get along on a voluntary, consensual basis. There are only certain psychopaths and sociopaths out there who think it's okay to use violence to get their way. And there are some of these people who are just your average thug. And you can use a gun and defend yourself against that person, and no one will blink at that. They'll say, good for you, most places, good for you defending yourself. But the psychopaths who get into political office, on the other hand, everybody thinks they got some sort, their S doesn't stink and they can totally tell everybody what to do and we have to obey them because they got a bunch of other psychos with guns and cells they'll throw you in there if you don't do what they say. And that's all we're really trying to change here, Joy, is we're trying to disempower those psychopaths. And so people can keep having the good life that we already have.
And just to sort of to speak to the there's 320 million of us now. There's so many. We've got to have this complex system to manage all these people. Well, so now you can buy a pair of sneakers that were made in China, and the people that made those sneakers live to completely different standards of behavior than you would expect. What you expect of your neighbors is not what they expect where those sneakers were made. But that doesn't change the fact that I can just pay to have those made, and now I've got a pair of sneakers at a good price. Now, in the same way, we want a place where we will live our way, and we can still interact with everyone, even though their standards of living are different from our standards of living.
Yep.
Well, I think, I have the trouble with whatever mechanism it is, if it's the economic system or whatever systems there are people who are going to continually get hurt. And unfortunately, I like to believe that there's ultimate goodness in people. I don't come from, we're all sinners. But when people start getting resources and power, and it doesn't have to be political, others get hurt. So that's why and whether or not it's a governmental answer, it doesn't have to be. But I mean, that's why initially I worked for the EPA.
Yeah.
People went there, and this was in the 1970s. We were there because rivers were starting on fire in the United States. And so there was an intent to try to not have that happen. There's still so many systems in place, and they're not just political, they're also corporate, so many systems in place that are keeping minorities down. And so that's where
well, hold on, just to
I don't see
to
a
address your
world where the free market system doesn't, in my mind, doesn't work. That people, stronger and more powerful people, which tends to be white males, are going to keep other people down.
Let me address something for you, Joy. Having a lack of an institution where psychopaths gather to do violence to the rest of us doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of humanity is going to behave themselves and everything's going to be all flowers and utopia. That's not what we're after, and that's not the picture we're painting. What we are saying, though, is let's look at who the number one biggest offender of human atrocities is in all of Earth's history, and that is the organization calling themselves government, an institution. Now, all we're saying is let's do away with that institution in the same way we did away with slavery, right? When we did away with slavery, no one knew that, who's going to pick the cotton, right? No one knew that it would be, juiced from the ground, refined and put into machines that, churn, that emit fire and smoke and, churn the fields to pick the cotton. No one knew that at the time. All people knew was slavery is wrong. And what we're saying is having an institution of violence known as government is just as wrong as having overt slavery, and we should do away with that institution immediately.
Well, the problem is I think that we would recreate it. I mean, one of your comments was, I think that's what's human nature, is that they then want to organize, and then people want to get into power.
Well, hold on just a second. So if you let's assume that you're right. Let's assume that you are correct. Like we have a crystal ball, we're sure that we will end up right in this statist mess that we're in right now. At least we will have a period of time where we are not in this statist mess. We will at least have that period of time. And frankly, that is the worst case scenario, is to end right back in a position where we have the institution known as government.
Well, first of all, I just want to address what you said there, Joy, before you go on, about this idea. If you were to press a button, the magic button, and make the government disappear tomorrow, then yes, people would immediately begin rebuilding towards that, because that's what people currently believe in. That's the paradigm that people are living underneath. In order to get to what we're talking about, a world without institutionalized violence, a world without a monopoly on violence, as Barack Obama described it correctly, then we have to have a shift. We have to have a paradigm shift. We have to have a renaissance in the way that people think about these things. And if we can accomplish that, or when we can accomplish that, then the people who've had that shift will not go back, in the same way that we're not going back to slavery. Right? There's not much of a clamoring for that these days. Go ahead.
Yeah, but there's other types of slavery. So
there are.
It changes, and so
like taxes,
and it's much less bad.
Like, for example, the words you say sound good. There's a lot of areas that I'm diametrically opposed to what you say. And so it's kind of like, well, how do we reach a point to, like, I think guns need to be controlled. And as, I think I've had a conversation before with you that
by
it was
people
like,
with guns?
No,
who's controlling them? Like this, it's turtles all the way down. Like, oh well, we need the guns controlled. Well, who's going to control the people controlling the guns?
But I would say,
so far, those are the biggest murderers. So,
absolutely,
I don't want my great nephews and great nieces to be scared to go to school, and so there's things.
Well, it sounds like you should take them out of public school then.
No, I fully support public school, and
that's where all the murders are happening.
Many people in my anyway.
And also, I mean, the statistics show pretty clearly you don't get a very good education there.
But what I'm saying, hey, people in my family have done quite well, and they've all gone to public schools. But
well, then they did so in spite of their education.
Oh, I don't think so. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, today I marched in a pride parade, and Spokane, it was amazing. And I marched with my church. Mm-hmm. And so I think, again, even church as an institution can impose a lot of harm. But
especially when they have free reign to cause violence without any repercussion.
Right. But so I think it's with individuals to then counter that. Like, there's hundreds of bills being proposed that are anti-LGBTQ that are just, I think the source of them is a lot of hate. So,
and wouldn't it be great if we could take away the ability to enforce those hateful bills?
Right, those men and women who want to use that hate that you're talking about, they want to use violence to stop people from being gay in public, or from being trans, or from doing a drag show, or whatever. They want to use violence, guns, the guns of government, to stop those things from happening. And we're saying those people shouldn't have that power, and neither should your people either. There should be no power like that, where you get to use violence to force your neighbors to do what you want them to.
Yeah, well, and I agree, but I think that people tend to form, and it starts with PTA and everything else. And so I guess from my
we're not trying to say that there shouldn't be groups of people. Like, nothing of the sort. No, there should absolutely be groups of people. Human is a social animal. We're just saying that none of those groups should be allowed to use violence and threats without that at least being something that people aren't okay with.
Well, and so I guess that's where I'm not quite sure how I fully understand all of that, but I think that there's still a role for government that we need to change what government looks like.
What should it look like to
you? I find it much easier to understand on the local level than I do at higher levels, But in work that I've done, like through faith-based community organizing, I did that in Palo Alto, California. We were able to work with the county commission. We were able to work with the city council. And we did it not with violence, but we did it by bringing people who don't usually have power to the table to have power. And
the thing is, what you're
so-
not doing is you're not seeing the violence inherent in the system. So whenever you talk
and
about
maybe
the
I've
city
just had such, I've had wonderful 67 years on Earth, and so I probably haven't encountered the things that you've encountered, and I've been
hold
very
on.
lucky.
So
And
a city council, now they have the power to tax people in that city, right?
Yeah.
And if people don't want to pay that tax, then they go to jail.
And for me,
they'll probably have their house
I
stolen from
see-
them.
Yeah, like maybe they'll have their house stolen from them, but like these are all threats. That's
I
the thing
can
that you're
vote
not
on
grappling
that.
with, is that the city
No.
council only has power because of force.
But I can vote on that.
No,
and
you
so
can't.
if we have levies or if we have other things, we can vote on
No,
that.
you really can't. There's not going to
Um,
be a vote to abolish the property tax anytime soon, because that's part and parcel of how the system works.
But we don't have a state tax in Washington,
okay.
and that's through voting.
When you
that
vote,
it's not
though,
there.
Joy, when you vote, what you're doing is you're saying, I want to force my preference onto these other people over here. And that is always wrong. It's always wrong to force your preference onto other people. It's fine for you to have your own preferences. You get to choose those. What's not right is for you to force your preferences on anyone else.
Well, see, I find that there's a stronger role for community, and I think that it's not that one community forces itself, but I think that we have to think of each other when we do make our decisions on how we're going to live our
That
life.
sounds really great.
Yeah,
And-
that's great.
I don't think you should confuse a community, which is a voluntary association of people, with a government, which is an involuntary association. So if you want to go and raise money to help somebody, I think that's absolutely fantastic, whether it be as helping the poor or helping the sick or the elderly or, kids or whatever it is, whoever needs help. That's absolutely great. Fundraise that, do it through a church, do it through, the Shriners or whoever it is that's out there raising money and doing good acts. That's what should be happening. The wrong way to go about helping, quote unquote, is to go to the government and demand that they do a thing, which would, of course, then mean they have to tax people.
I don't think that, I think if you look at the NIH or if you look at some of these other organizations, I don't think a lot could have been achieved in our country without some of this government infrastructure.
Okay, well, that's because you're not looking at the alternative. So if you look at all the places where there's less violence, you see more innovation. So, for example, they're starting to finally put the screws to it these days, but in technology, in the internet, there was immense productivity and innovation because there was very, very little regulation in these areas. And if you look
but
at
there was money. There was money coming from the government.
Heck yeah, there was.
So again.
Yeah, there's got to be money.
But what I'm saying is that I think that there can be. I feel like that the government can play a needed and positive role. Because people don't.
Well, let me run an idea past you.
Self-interest ends up with immigrant farm workers being starved and drinking polluted water, or there's just things that people won't necessarily do under
So just
their
to touch,
best interest.
this is twice you've mentioned the environmental thing, and the environmental thing is a problem of government. Now, our particular court system, we ended up inheriting the British tradition where environmental damage to people was acceptable, and you just couldn't effectively sue for it. That's why the rivers lit on fire. But let me run an idea past you just real quick. So, okay, think about this city council. Right? And now they've got, some ability to do some things. Now imagine, what if all of the money that they had came not because they threatened people, but because we gathered together and voluntarily handed them some money to do projects that would be good for our community?
But it only goes so far. So I'm a grant writer for.
You really
nonprofits.
don't believe that people are good then?
No,
Because look,
they
these
are,
people wouldn't have
but-
this money if they hadn't promised us that that's what they'd do with it.
I know, but even when I'm working with these nonprofits, if there wasn't a source oftentimes of some governmental funding, the nonprofits they'd fade away.
Well, if they can't get
individuals-
people to fund them on their own volition, then maybe they shouldn't exist. Thank you
Good
for the
ideas
call.
do not require force.
Yeah, thank you for the call tonight, Joy. I definitely appreciate your struggling and you're trying to have this conversation. I wish we could keep going.
Please call again.
We got other people that are on the line here, so yeah, call again another time. More coming up.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey, who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today. This is...
You ain't gonna make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me?
Because you scared me. What am I being
now.
detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump this week was charged over his alleged mishandling of classified documents after he left the White House. The twice impeached former US president, who's again running for the White House, faces 37 criminal counts including conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, and illegally retaining classified documents under the Espionage Act. From Washington, D.C., Benji Hire reports.
It's his second indictment in as many months. This one could land him a prison sentence on conviction. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump, protesting his innocence, said he'd been summoned to appear at a federal court in Miami, Florida on Tuesday afternoon. He'll be arrested there and hear the charges against him. What is this all about? Well, last year his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago was searched by the FBI and 11,000 documents were seized. They included around 100 marked as classified, some labelled top secret. A separate investigation into Joe Biden's handling of documents continues. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
The French president has condemned the stabbing attack in southeast France that took place on Thursday, leaving 4 children needing intensive care. Ross Cullen has the latest.
Emmanuel Macron said that attacking children was the most barbaric act there is. He was speaking on Friday after visiting Annecy, where an attack took place on Thursday as a man stabbed adults and children in and around a playground in the southeast city in France. The French president also met members of the public who tried to intervene to stop the attack, saying that he was extremely proud of their efforts.
A major dam was destroyed in Ukraine on Tuesday, triggering what the United Nations calls a humanitarian, economic and ecological catastrophe. Moscow and Kyiv blame each other, and heavy flooding has forced thousands to evacuate the region. Journalist Tom Much has visited the Kherson region and reports from Odessa.
The Ukrainian government is warning that the worst of the flooding is still to come, that there could be a higher water level coming in the next 2 or 3 days. Again, this is actually going to affect Russian-occupied areas even worse because they're on the lower bank of the river.
Heavy smoke from Canada's wildfires impacted millions of people across parts of North America this week. On Tuesday, New York's air quality was briefly ranked as the worst in the world, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. President Biden's announced that more than 600 US firefighters have been sent north to help Canadian authorities battle the blazes. More than 200 fires are burning out of control. And former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is stepping down as a Member of Parliament, following the release of the Partygate report. The inquiry was examining whether he misled Parliament over whether Downing Street broke COVID lockdown rules. Johnson says the report is an attempt to drive him out. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
maybe, if you're already on the line, maybe we won't have time for everybody. If that's the case, I would ask you all to, if you don't get in tonight, we still have another half hour of the radio show here, but there's a whole other show that's going to be coming up a little bit later on tonight, about an hour from now.
Are you talking about a shirt that has some sort of a logo that they've made and perhaps have some sort of merchandise apparel?
Beard Talk Live, you mean? Weren't you wearing that shirt earlier tonight? Oh, you still are. Okay.
Wait, hold on.
He's stripping here in the studio.
Play the strip music. What is it?
Yeah, there it is. All right, Beard Talk Live comes up later tonight. That's 10:30 Eastern Time. So a half hour after we wrap up the radio show, we go online only. No FCC to get in the way. No commercial breaks to get in the way.
FCC it. We'll do it live.
Yeah, I think you guys take a smoke break at some point.
We do. We only take one break
during the program, but that's like an hour into it at least. Maybe an hour and a half.
Usually about halfway.
Yeah, so that comes up later tonight. You can only see it on our video streaming platform, so check out watch.freetalklive.com. We'll take you right to the stream page on Odyssey. So just be there at 10:30 Eastern, and you guys will kick off Beard Talk Live at that time. Are you coming up on 50 some episodes?
We're coming up
where
on
are you
50.
At?
We're at 43, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like you're higher than that. Is it 43?
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure last episode was the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
All right. So stay tuned for that, and we're going to go back to your calls and thoughts. There was one other thought I had. We had Joy on the line a moment ago. An interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It took up a whole segment. About the government and her kind of...
It was a good call. She was,
very interesting, very open-minded.
Thinking.
Yeah, willing to consider different viewpoints. And it's hard after 67 years to, consider the potential that you might have this all wrong, this being beliefs about government and how society could be organized without the use of organized violence, which is, of course, what... ultimately the government as we know it is.
Yeah, and that thought sure shakes the foundations of your whole worldview.
No doubt. And she mentioned this idea that I think a lot of people believe, but I don't think there's really any evidence for it, that those who are in the government are somehow not self-interested.
Right.
And I think we've seen plenty of evidence that they are absolutely self-interested. We were just talking about the president apparently taking a $5 million bribe with his son earlier tonight. And, of course, Trump's in it for his self-interests, and all the local politicians are in it for their self-interests, which may be helping their own business, punishing the businesses that are competing with them, or whatever it is that they're into this for. It might be just aggrandizing power to them or their family name or whatever. If they're pretending that they have no self-interest, you're being lied to.
Right.
So, anyway, that's just one other thing. Let's go to your phone calls and thoughts here. We have Barrett on the line calling from Idaho. Barrett, are you listening on the radio out there?
No, I turned the radio off because usually I'm listening through the phone. You had the phone on. I was listening to the radio, but I know it was interference. So
no, thanks. I just wondering if you were on the radio initially. All right. So what's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, it was a delayed feedback time and stuff like that. So I usually I turn that off. So
yeah, no, you got to turn it off when you're on hold. I just wanted to make sure you were a radio listener. Anyway, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm a radio listener. This is the first time listening, actually, and thank you for taking my call.
All right, welcome.
I heard the comment. And to comment on your last thing you said, actually, history has repeated itself from the beginning of time. And I know it's going to be uncomfortable about further history, but you have to have documentation. It's like you were talking about the dictionary. You have a way of a standard to go to look at what history was. They got to have it written down. 1984, they started destroying books and destroying, the book 1984, 1948, which that actually happened. Czechoslovakia, it talked about. But you look at, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that aspect of that stuff, but people can do their homework on that. But he was a former CIA operative that knew what was coming down, and that was turning into communism. Some people want the communism in this country. I'll touch on that in a second, but basically that actually comes into, if you look at documentation of, you said a dictionary. Well, I have a history book that I use that is a foundational history book from the beginning of time, and it's called the Bible, Basic Instruction for Before Leaving Earth, Bible.
I've never heard Bible as an acronym before. That's awesome. Did you know that buffet is also an acronym?
What's that one?
Big, ugly, fat effers eating together.
Yeah, big, ugly what?
Fat effers. I can't say the word on radio. I can't say the other F word. Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Let me turn up my radio a little bit.
Okay. I thought you already turned the radio off.
Oh, phone up a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm listening on the phone.
So what's the point? You seem a little scattered here, Barrett. Are you driving at like one point in particular?
Yeah, let me get to the point. You were talking about the history of time, like as far as somebody was talking about the history of time. And the point is, as far as the government, as far as the structure of government, we've always we've searched for a king, and that has been coming. That has been from the book of Samuel, and people can read the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 8. You read that, and you were talking about Joe Biden's sons. Well, that actually happened with Samuel's sons. They were judges, and right out of the NASB, his sons, however, did not walk in the ways, but turned aside in dishonest gain and took bribes.
So wait a minute. Are you telling me that politicians and their families have been corrupt since biblical times? I am shocked. Correct. Shocked to find this out.
Correct.
Wait, are you also telling me that it was the church itself who wanted to control people and put things in their own books, their own literature that would aid them in controlling people and spawning the organization we know as government today?
Oh, that doesn't help you control people. No. Quite the opposite. Like, this actually
threatening people with burning in hell if you don't do as the good book says isn't controlling people?
Yeah, that's not actually in there. But you're talking a completely different book now. But anyway, no. So there's actually a part in there.
Religions all function in basically the same way. It's fear-driven, just like politics. Just like that's why I continue to refer to government as a religion. Because government does the exact same things. They have all the ritual, all the pomp and circumstance that religions do. They have their prophets. They have their deities. They have the throne, the king that our caller is referring to that people seek out. They have all of that. And it's time for people to do away with all of that. Well, right? You can have your religion. You can be as religious as you want to be. You can have your organizations and all that stuff. Just stop controlling people. That's all.
Sure.
Well, so here's the thing, though. When there's something that comes along that actually has the power to make people more free, which most Christians, I'll grant you, don't even remember that was the point, and that's actually how you're supposed to identify Yahweh, is because he brings you out of the house of bondage.
Right.
But when they find something that could actually help you become more free, the first thing they want to do is own it and control it. So, like, Gary Gensler just said this thing about, like, we don't need digital currency because we already have it. It's the dollar. It's the yen. And see, here's this thing that's making people free that has the potential to make them completely free. And the first thing they want to do is make sure that they control it. So, like, no, you can own Bitcoin, but only if you do it through the NASDAQ, so that the corporation or the bank actually does the owning part of it, but you get to have an account with them.
So anyway,
and that's what happened with religion.
I interrupted.
They wanted to dominate and control
so I apologize.
Barrett, any thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate your feedback on that. There's two people there. I'm wondering, who's usually there's a lead person and a person that's the first person I talk to, and then the second person. That's the only way I can.
Yeah, it's okay. You're new to the show. There's actually 3 people on the air here tonight. Usually we have 3 hosts, and I'd like to invite you to call in again at another time. Thank you, Barrett, for the call. I appreciate it. We are here 7 nights a week. We do this thing live from, I think he's on the West Coast, so 4 to 7 Pacific, and Eastern time, 7 to 10 at night Eastern. So, if you feel like you got more to say, you know how you can reach us. Let's go to the phones here. We've got Chad is on the line here. Chad, you're on Free Talk Live in, I think, Michigan?
Yep, I'm in Michigan. How's it going?
Welcome. You're on the air.
Yeah, the conversation with Joy was pretty interesting. I think this is why voluntarism and secession are really such important concepts, because voluntarism, you could have any government you want under voluntarism, really. I mean, it's just a matter of whether or not you're voluntarily associated into it. And what she was saying about local government being something she wants to work with, as a voluntarist, I have no problem with that. If that's the thing is that with voluntarism, you could have a whole menu of governments.
Yeah, hey, I
And if
want
you
to
allow
have
for
the roads
secession-
cleared, okay? I want to have the snow cleared from the roads during the wintertime up here. I'm sure you guys want that in Michigan as well. And I'm willing to pay for that service, right? And to a lesser extent, fire protection, I'm okay with that, right? Like there's a few things that the more local governments have monopolized over the years that could absolutely be done in a market environment.
Are you saying that everything governments do is either a product or a service, and that in the absence of government, those products and services, as long as they have value to people, would be provided in another way?
I wouldn't say everything they do, because stealing would be the other thing.
If it had value, right? But also at a lower cost.
Well, hold on. Let's examine the claim here. So what about the service of putting you in jail if you steal? Is that something you want?
No.
No?
No, I'd rather see restitution than jail time for most things with a victim.
Well, that sounds like you wouldn't want a government then.
No, I definitely wouldn't.
And sure, there's plenty of people who would. And you know what? More power to you. Just don't try and bring that on me.
Go ahead, Chad.
All I'm trying to say is that it really doesn't matter. I mean, what you're saying, I agree with, because if I were to have my own kind of government that I would want, it would be similar to what you guys are talking about. But other people aren't there yet. They don't trust it, whatever. That's fine, because if they want to have their form of government and see if it works,
let them.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, and that's why secession is so important, because what we need now is not even maybe just state secession, even municipal secession, or making new municipalities that actually have power. And you just don't need the state and federal. They really don't do anything but interfere. I mean, if you own a business, you only really deal with county and city governments anyway.
Yeah.
And if you want to have even a fascist government, I don't really care. I just don't want to live there.
Yeah, I hear you. How's it going there in Michigan with the secession movement? Do you guys even have one?
Michigan, there actually is a UP secession movement, but I don't live in the UP, and there's definitely no substantial one here.
Have you thought about moving to New Hampshire?
Oh yes, big time. I've been to New Hampshire quite a few times. I was intending on moving, but I had a daughter. She's a year old now, and it would be basically her mom was not going to move. So I don't know what I could do. But
we'll see you in 20 years.
Well, maybe not. Actually, I wouldn't. What I would like to do is get some property out there at least, and possibly stay part of the year. But I mean, yeah, with a kid, it's.
Are you still together with the mom, or are you guys divorced or whatever?
Well, we were never really. It was kind of I knocked her up, like right when I met her. So I mean.
You're as married as you ever were.
Complicated situation.
That's really fast. You did it right when you met her?
Hi, how's it?
Oops.
Well, pretty close to it.
All right,
But,
Chad. Well,
no,
hey,
she's great.
good luck out there, man. And hopefully you can get her to come to New Hampshire and like check out the Porcupine Freedom. Like, see if you can drag her to the Porcupine Freedom Festival here in a couple weeks or next year, whenever you get her to convince her. And see what she thinks about that. Because actually, I think it's warmer here than it is in Michigan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably is.
It depends. Up north, up near Rogers, it's not. But I'll be at PorcFest, so I don't know. Hopefully,
stop by and say hello at the Free Talk Live tent to whoever it is that happens to be around. Probably won't be me because feds don't want me to go. But thanks for the call tonight, man. I appreciate hearing from you. Let's continue here. We've got this caller, unscreened. You're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
Hey, I'm Andrew from Tennessee.
Andrew, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
I just had a thought about the caller earlier. She kept bringing up the EPA and all that stuff. And I had a thought that with the non-aggression principle, wouldn't it alleviate some of these environmental problems? Because I'm under the impression with the non-aggression principle that if somebody's attacking your property or your person, then you can defend yourself. And so I would assume if somebody's polluting the environment so much that it's coming downstream and polluting my water supply, I would consider that an act of aggression.
Yes, yeah.
And
Because
so I feel
it
like I
is.
would have a right to. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, you would have a tort.
Yeah,
in that case.
that's the part people don't think about, is that the fact that you are not allowed to do anything to the people who are poisoning you is because of government.
They're protecting them,
Right.
like
and
BP.
the government is actually the ones causing a lot of the problems
Sure.
that are causing these big companies to. They're allowing them to dump millions of gallons of waste into a river system and pollute the population, but you have no recourse against them. And so I think where that caller is confused is she's not understanding where the government comes in and they're actually causing these problems that the non-aggression principle would actually alleviate.
Yes, they're protecting a lot of the corporate polluters, and don't forget the military is actually the biggest polluter, I think more than
on the
top
face
4.
of the earth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
but
US
they're
military.
doing that around the world, so we don't worry about that.
Right.
Because that's
But-
here, you know.
but look-
So we don't
That's
care.
not in my backyard.
Like,
Right, yeah.
It takes a while, though, for people to begin to see the Force. And I don't mean this in like Star Wars, the Force, right? Begin to see the coercion in their everyday situations. And like sometimes I don't even see it. And I hang around with people like this to say, oh, no, it's this and that. So you know how this works? Yeah, okay, well, it's just like that. And people will explain it to you. And that's why we're here doing this radio show, is to explain it to other people, because it takes a while for you to really latch onto it and be able to find the coercion in these situations. But once you do, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, and see, I've seen it for years. I mean, I feel like I've seen it more of my life than less of my life, and that's why I get kind of ostracized, because people are like, oh, you're just complaining, you're just I'm like, no, I'm trying to be positive, because I want you to see the reality so you can actually react in the appropriate way, you know, instead of being like, I call it being an ostrich, you know, you just putting your head in the sand and, you know, ostriching your way through life, you know.
No one ever told the doctor that told them about their cancer, you're just being negative. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is like, hey, we're sick. Here's the cause. Here's the symptoms. Here's the exact kind of illness that we have. Here's how we can cure it completely. Well, you're just being negative.
Anyways, I just had that epiphany, like when she was talking, and I was thinking, I was like, well, you know,
insight.
The non-aggression principle, 100%. That solves it. That's
Property
the answer
rights.
right there.
Property rights. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that side of it.
What she's talking about is creating the problem instead of finding solutions. And I was like, man, that's the solution right there.
Yeah.
So
You nailed it,
anyways,
dude. Thanks for the call, man.
I'm going to listen to Beer Talk later.
All right,
Hey,
very
thanks,
cool.
man.
Thanks for the call.
This is what I refer to as the fog of statism, right? I was in it for the longest time. Took me 38-ish years to begin to just even consider, like, oh, is government evil? And it is. And does it only has one tool, and that's violence and coercion, and that's all it ever. Oh, it really does. Like, you have to be open-minded enough to consider and ask yourself, is this true? Look at it objectively. Is this true? Then follow the evidence. If you follow the evidence, it becomes insanely clear. Like, the evidence is overwhelming once you start to look at it, but it takes a while to come out of that fog of statism.
Right. It's like putting on the glasses and They Live.
Yes, that's exactly what it's like. You know?
It's a shock to the system.
Yeah, or the beer goggles.
And all of a sudden, everything's black and white, and you can see what the messages are really about.
Let's go to the phones here. Skeeter is on the line in California. Skeeter, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey guys. I'm the guy who keeps calling about, challenging the NAP.
The non-aggression principle.
Yeah, the non-aggression principle, which is just a prototype, right? But I bring up these scenarios about kids. That's the guy, the bearded guy talking about, like his explanation, his kind of.
There's more than one bearded guy in the studio, by the way.
But yeah, you heard
the
my.
one who talked about, he tried to, explain it. But
so the child is in a trust. So while they are in a trust, are.
I heard that already. I heard your explanation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What were you calling about?
I thought we were going to have a conversation. My bad.
What was it that you wanted to say, Skeeter?
I heard that already. I heard your explanation.
Okay, let's get to what you wanted to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let me just establish again. I'm a market anarchist. I'm an evolutionary utilitarian. That's what I like to call myself. I made that up. There's no other label that I've never found a school of thought that kind of coincides with my real principles that are actually consistent. I reject the Austrian school. I reject the idea of rights, which are inherently statist. I reject the
They're not, but okay.
Yeah, they're inherently statist. They're Lockean.
They're actually the opposite of statist, but go ahead.
The market doesn't provide rights like what you guys talk about.
Oh, an effective one does. Now I grant it's not some objective thing, but it's efficient. You should appreciate that it's efficient. I mean, his whole focus is what is efficient, what is not efficient. And the thing is that my respecting your rights is actually way more efficient than my not respecting your rights. So if I'm in an economic system where we have the norm of respecting each other's rights, it's a way more efficient economic system than one that doesn't.
Go ahead, Skeeter.
No, it isn't. Not necessarily. Was I mute? God. Can you just tell me if I'm in mute? Not necessarily. There's instances where you shouldn't respect someone's what you call rights.
Like what? Give us an example of where you shouldn't respect someone's rights.
I don't know. Maybe I can talk about this somewhat. I don't know. I was going to talk about the children stuff, but like for instance, okay, let's just go to children stuff. Yeah, it's relevant. So again, let me start off. I just wanted to say to you, I'm just glad.
Okay, so you're not going to answer that question, right?
Huh? No, I'm come back. I have one important thing I just wanted to commend you guys about, because the last call I had with Aria, she started BSing me with this prototype theory, and I thought I was going insane, and I heard, and Bonnie was agreeing with it, talking about how she's always so principled and agreeing with this prototype theory, which
I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. None of the three of us were listening.
Yeah, I haven't caught up on that episode.
The bald guy was talking about it, the definitions, when he's talking about definitions, and Aria talking about like prototypes and BS.
I don't know. Were you talking about that, Captain?
I haven't been on an episode with Aria.
When you guys are talking about definitions.
I don't know.
And you're talking about not establishing definitions.
Yeah, you've lost us, dude. I'm sorry.
I think he's talking about me saying that people, when they're having a debate, need to agree on the definitions. They don't necessarily need to be the definitions out of dictionaries.
You did say that, yeah.
You were referring to the debate I was having with me, myself, Aria, Bonnie, and that other chick.
I don't think he was necessarily, because we didn't know what that was all about.
Yeah, I haven't listened to that
some
episode.
other caller had called in that debate to talk about the definitions thing.
You may have had that debate, and someone might have been calling about that debate, but the three of us in the studio weren't privy to that debate. So let's get back to the question that I think you said you were going to answer, which was in regards to where rights weren't supposed to be recognized. Or
when I shouldn't recognize someone's rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just get back to the children example, which is what I'm going to do both at once. So, can you define the non-aggression principle?
Okay, so you're not going to answer that question, right?
What's that?
You just came back with another question, and you had said you were going to give us an example.
I can't proceed without knowing your definition, your principles, and showing which, because I have to use the term aggression to not respect someone's rights, right? That's aggression, right? When I don't respect someone's rights. So I have to know what aggression is.
I don't know. So it may or may not be. Depends.
Every violation of someone's rights.
I'm going to get to it. I just need to establish the definition of aggression, which is not respecting someone's rights. I'll show you.
No, I wouldn't say that's what aggression is.
Where you agree, you have to use
it. Because if you have a right to free speech, I don't have to use aggression to, not listen to you, right? Like here's what I'd like to suggest to you, Skeeter. We never really got anywhere with your call here tonight. He called last night, by the way, and revealed that calls himself this market anarchist or whatever, but he is a utilitarian, and that's what I took away from it. Yeah, he's got a lot to say, so I'd like to suggest that you call in later tonight on Beard Talk Live, which will be starting in about a half an hour. You're welcome to hold for that time, or you can call in at a later point. But these guys are going to be on the show, and I'm sure you would love to have him answer that question.
I would adore it.
Get into all the nitty-gritty about the non-aggression principle. And thank you for the call there, Skeeter. I'll leave you on hold in case you just want to hang on for the half hour. You can tune in at watch.freetalklive.com, 10:30 Eastern Time for Beard Talk Live. And who will be the first caller? We'll have to see. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated